Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has dragon fire and ice council bashing. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Harute Haptism and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Dragon of the Spiral, Prologue, Page Summit, Tetsu no Kuni, Mifune, General of Tetsu no Kuni, and ninja leaders of the 5 great elemental nations, Gaara of the Desert, Kazekage of Sunagakure, Tsunade Senju, Hokage of Konohagakure, Reikage of Kumagakure, Mei Terumi, Mizukage of Kurigakure, and Inoki of both scales, Tsuchikage of Iwagakure, each sat facing the woman standing at the center podium, waiting for the response from the one man that they know would be essential to the Shinobi Alliance against Madara and the upcoming 4th Great Shinobi War. Behind her stood 2 figures flanking both her sides. The woman herself was a very beautiful blonde-haired woman, her hair was short but bangs reached down to her feet. She faced a message scroll in hand, no fear in her demeanor whatsoever. She opened it, began to read, further grabbing the attention of all those present. Esteemed leaders of the elemental nations, she read, I am deeply honored that you think so highly of the abilities of my compatriots and I, enough to invite us to join you and your alliance. Regrettably, I could not attend, as there are other matters that demand my immediate attention, but back to the topic at hand. It is my decision, as leader of Lightning Road, do hereby refuse to join the Shinobi Alliance. 12 years ago, a beaten, bloodied and disfigured blonde-haired boy walks down a disheveled dirt path with a pleading more died than alive red-haired girl on his back. Every so often she would gather strength from her broken and malnourished body to let out a weak rigid scream and beg her blonde gurney to end her suffering. Each time however he would refuse to grant her request. In his refusal he would think back the events that changed life. 1 week prior, I told you, I'd bring you back to village. Naruto grinned to the unconscious Uchiha on his back, ignoring the pained blood-flavored coughs and sharp rapid spikes of pain in his chest that occurred every time his heart would beat. As Naruto entered the main gates his already hazy vision caught sight of a certain pink-haired Kunoichi. Hey Sakura, told you I'd bring him. His words were interrupted by the sound of her screams. Unknown to Naruto, the injuries he acquired fighting Sasuke were far worse than he could have imagined but were quite obvious to her. Stay away from me. Sakura shouted fearfully before her eyes caught the mangled husk slung over the creature's shoulder. But I, was all he could mutter before she grabbed Sasuke from the monster. How could you do that to him? He's your friend, she yelled, letting all her fear and hatred lace her voice. You really are a monster, she condemned while gently putting Sasuke's head on the ground before rising again to face the blood-soaked beast. Sakura hadn't noticed the clouded look in quickly overcoming Naruto when she cocked her fist to deliver all her hatred. Unfortunately, Naruto's body was already at its limit and he collapsed on top of the anger-filled Kunoichi, sending them both to the ground just inches from Sasuke. Get off me, someone help. Get it away from me. Naruto fell unconscious listening to her seemingly endless array screams toward him. And just like that his connection to the girl he loved was broken. 2 days later, Naruto awoke to an all-too-familiar ceiling and the various smells of intertwined medicines and antiseptics. He knew immediately where he was, the Konoha hospital. Feeling unusually tired, being a first for him, not even bothering to turn his head to check the date or time, he decided to go back sleep. As soon as he closed his eyes, he falls back asleep. Unfortunately his dreams were of the fight he and Sasuke had at the Valley of the End and Sakura damning him back to the fiery pit he came from. After hearing a few more curses he heard when he was barely conscious, he was awoken to find Tsunade entering his room with a downtrodden look on her face. It's good to see you finally woke up, Naruto, she greeted. Hey Bach-an, Naruto greeted as he tried to rise to a sitting position only to lowered back down to his pillow by well-endowed cage. Take it easy. You haven't fully healed yet, she said calmly with a hint of melancholy that didn't go unnoticed. Okay, he said since he was still felt far too sore and stiff all over and had yet to feel any of his energy return. As if on cue, Tsunade asked him if he felt his energy return, to which he quickly answered no. He could tell she was trying to tell him something that likely wasn't pleasant but couldn't tell what. Bach-an, is everyone okay? He asked, guessing that it was about friends. They're all fine. They all suffered from extreme chakra exhaustion. Neji, Chaoji, Lee, Kiba and Akamaru were in critical condition, but worst is over. Shikamaru got off easy, he just had broken a finger, Tsunade reassured him by flexing her pinky at him. The last part caused him laugh a little, but was stifled by a sharp pain in his chest and just continued to smile like an idiot until his next question. What about Sasuke? He asked much to his chagrin. He is recovering nicely in an Anbu-controlled wing of the hospital, she answered sharply. Tired of beating around the bush, Naruto got straight to the point. What's wrong Bach-an, Miss Happy Hour or Shizune did dump your secret stash again? He said trying to cheer her up. If only she thought. Naruto, have you ever given any thought as to what you would want be if you weren't a ninja? She asked dreading the answer. Not really, it'll be pretty hard for me to be Hokage if I wasn't a ninja, he answered her, not really thinking of the question, but that was all she needed to hear. What does that have to do with anything? He asked, not reading between the lines. Tsunade, realizing there was no point in withholding the situation anymore, told him flatly what was bothering her, or rather him. Naruto, I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you, she said, before he sat up, ignoring the pain and nodding. When you fought Sasuke, you used the Kyuubi's chakra, didn't you? She asked. It's not like I wanted to, it just happened, he stated, before she continued. Too much of the Kyuubi's chakra seeped into your body, normally that wouldn't be much of a problem, but you exceeded your body's limit. Tsunade noticed she was starting to lose him, simply put, your chakra network is completely destroyed. After saying this, his eyes shot open at the realization of how severe this was. He knew the chakra network was what allowed people to use chakra for jutsu and other abilities shinobi possessed. But there must be something you can do, like a replant or something, Naruto asked, hoping for a positive answer. You mean transplant, and it's not that simple. The chakra network can't be replaced, even with the help of the Hyuga doctors on staff, Tsunade stated. What about the fox, can it do anything about this? Fuzzy normally heals me pretty fast, he asked frantically. You didn't know how severe your injuries were when you returned, did you? He shook his head in response. Tsunade took a deep breath. You had a puncture hole the size of a fist in your chest, he mentally shrugged that statement, he already knew that, so deep we could see your heart beating. The mental image made him cringe as she continued listing his injuries: severe 4th-degree burns from head to toe, your skin was black as charcoal, and it falling off. On top of that, the tissue around your puncture wound that wasn't charred was severely infected from prolonged exposure, and to top it all off, you also had numerous lacerations and broken bones all over your body. It was a miracle you could walk at all, let alone carry someone with you. The image of himself was getting painfully clear at this point and made him almost throw up the contents of his already empty stomach. Like a demon, he thought, no wonder she reacted like that. Using the Kyuubi's chakra to fight on top of healing all your injuries was just too much for your network to handle and burned it out, she explained as the severity of his condition slowly became apparent to him. Naruto, your days as ninja are over. In that instant the fire that always burned in his began to dim. Unfortunately though, the bad news didn't end there. I'm afraid that's not all though. Tsunade never wanted to say these next words. With all the added stress your body has from not being able to circulate or release chakra naturally, combined with your large reserves and the Kyuubi slowly wearing down your body. It's possible that stiff sore feeling you have is a side effect of that. When your body can no longer cope with the stress, it will forcibly expel the pent-up chakra. Naruto thought back to a similar explanation he heard during the Chunin exams preliminaries when Kurenai explained what Shino did to Zaku. So does that mean he didn't like the image his mind put together? At the rate your body is going, you won't live to see your 17th birthday, she said solemnly. That news hit him harder than Sasuke's betrayal ever could. I said I would bring Sasuke back or die trying, didn't think it would go like this, he stated calmly before grinning widely. Bachan, can you do me a favor? Wondering what brought about his sudden change, agreed. What is it? She asked. I was wondering if you could ask Hiro-Sennin if he could teach Konohamaru the Rasengan. Tsunade was shocked he would ask that. I promised myself I'd teach it to him when he had some experience as a genin. I know you're the first person he goes to see when comes to the village. No problem, Naruto. If you need anything, Shizune's on call tonight, she said, leaving through the door. I'll be back in the morning to check on you. Outside in the hall, Shizune was sitting on the bench placed right outside his room, waiting for her teacher to exit the room. Did you? Shizune began, before the sound of glass shattering and low sobbing came from the room behind her. Teacher answered her question. As Tsunade walked away, Shizune sat back down on the bench listening to the sobs and contemplating the inevitable loss of her little brother's life and his dreams. Flashback end. Present. Hey, WHONGH ever you are, Naruto was suddenly drawn out of his thoughts and back to reality by the red head occupying his back. Just kill, nah, me, she ordered weakly. Shut up, he simply answered in a hushed, fatigued voice. It hurts too much, please, she continued begging. No one will, not ice a little more blo out on the road. Her breathing became extremely ragged as she spoke. Naruto thought that if he gave her the same answer he did earlier, she might just bite her tongue with the next burst of energy she felt, instead begging. He glanced back at her and looked directly into her worn eyes and suddenly remembered what happened after he was discharged from the hospital. Noon the prior day. After being discharged from the hospital, Naruto hobbled along the start on his brand new crutch. He felt the stares of civilians and ninja alike as he walked to his apartment, dreading the idea of climbing all those stairs in his condition. Before he entered the complex though, he was approached by a bare-masked Anbu. Uzumaki Naruto, you have been summoned to the council chamber immediately, he said plainly before disappearing into the ground. Naruto turned around, hobbled towards the Hokage Tower. He reached the council chambers 30 minutes after being summoned, which angered the council members who didn't know of his condition. Uzumaki Naruto, you have been summoned here to recount your capture of Genin Uchiha Sasuke, as Koharu informed him, his face instantly fell, not wanting to remember the night that ended his life. As the council asked their questions, Naruto answered truthfully about what happened, or rather what he actually remembered. After answering all their questions, the council began drawing their own opinions. One man with an X-shaped scar on his chin seemed unsatisfied with the inquiry and began asking Naruto what was wrong with his flow of chakra. Naruto was taken aback by the question, as was the rest of the council. Hiashi, head of the Hyuga clan, used his Byakugan to quickly examine Naruto. He saw that not only was Naruto's chakra wasn't flowing properly, but also his network itself appeared to be missing altogether. This sparked a whole new series of questions after Hiashi voiced his observations. Wanting to leave as quickly as possible and get some more rest, Naruto reluctantly told them of his condition. He didn't expect them to instantly bring up the Kyuubi's imprisonment. What is the status of the Yondame's seal? The man now identified as Danzo asked. The seal is intact, so there is no fear of its release, Tsunade answered calmly, attempting to kill the inquiry, but Danzo had other plans. My knowledge of seals is limited, but I do know they need chakra to fuel them, otherwise they are just useless scribbles. With the boy's network in its condition, the seal will likely lose power resulting in its release, Danzo informed, much to Tsunade's disapproval. But as you said, your knowledge is limited compared to that of a seal master, like the one who created it in the first place, Tsunade argued. There is credit to what he speaks of, Narashikaku spoke. The boy could potentially be a time bomb to the demon's release, Abiram Shibi advocated. Is there a way to restore his chakra network? I'm afraid not, the damage is far too extensive for me to repair, Tsunade answered, masking her dejection. This requires further deliberation. Genin Uzumaki, would you await the decision of this council in the waiting room outside, Hamura said, leaving no room for argument. Naruto was perfectly fine with the rest, since his leg was starting hurt. Several hours passed and the council finally came to a decision. Naruto was awoken from his slumber and escorted back into the council chambers by a cat mask Anbu. Koharu stood up and announced their decision. It is the decision of this council that we sentence Uchiha Sasuke to no less than 10 years in the Konoha maximum security prison, and Genin Uzumaki Naruto is hereby banished from Konohagakure no Seido. Naruto's jaw dropped from hearing this, and he instantly began to wonder what that would mean for him. Knowledge of all missions, jutsu, and significant village intelligence shall be sealed, and he is to remain a minimum of 20 miles away from Konoha and its allies. Your banishment will be effective upon the return of your new guardian, Jiraiya of the Sannin. Naruto zoned out. That was the second they said he was banished. His mind raced thinking of what he could possibly do to remain in the village, so much so that he didn't notice the counselors leaving the room. He was brought out of his thoughts when the cat mask Anbu placed her hand on his shoulder, before she vanishing in a swirl of leaves. Tsunade tried to console him, but her words couldn't reach him. Sorry, Bachan, but I need to pack, no telling when Iro Sennin will be back, Naruto deadpanned as he limped away from her. Several hours after Naruto's mind was wiped, Naruto wandered around the village going nowhere in particular. After a while, he thought he should begin making his way home. He decided to take a shortcut through some alleys, since the strain on his leg was starting to get to him again. After a short trek, his apartment complex finally came into view. Relieved to finally see his home, he failed to notice the group of slightly drunk ninjas sneak up on him. Well, if it isn't everyone's favorite demon, Naruto turned to address the bastard that dared to call him a demon, only to be knocked unconscious. Some time later, rise and shine, sleeping beauty, or in your case demon, said the unknown Konoha ninja. Naruto was awoken by a bucket of ice-cold water drenching him. Naruto quickly realized he was tied to a chair in nothing but his frog-printed boxers in a dark room surrounded by 8 people, obviously Chunin judging by their flak jackets. Who the hell are you? Where am I? Why am I? Naruto demands were cut by a Kunoichi's swift kick to his testicles through a hole in the chair he didn't know was there. He quickly emptied the contents of his stomach all over himself. Disgusting, she spat at him with a smirk. You know you've been mighty full of yourself lately, cozying up to the Hokage Jiraiya-sama, said a ninja in an uncomfortably pleasant tone. Me and everyone here got to thinking. Aye, Naruto shouted as another ninja stabbed Naruto's left leg with a kunai, before finishing the other's sentence. It's about time we put you back in your place. Oh, does the Kyuubi want to cry for mama? Another Kunoichi said darkly, causing the others to chuckle menacingly. Naruto said nothing as he narrowed his gaze each of his captors, unable to make out their faces in the dark room. Look at that. Kyuubi brat still has some fight left in. Let's see if we can change that, said the assumed leader of the group as he and the others each grabbed a different weapon, senbon, knives, kunai, ninja wire, shuriken, sickles with chains, and a bunch of other weapons he'd never even seen before. Naruto's screams reverberated through the compound, filling his tortures with a dark joy, similar to listening to an orchestra flowing through an age-old masterpiece created by some long-died composer, late into the night. "Ready to beg for your life yet?" asked one of his captors rhetorically. Naruto answered by staring at him with those same high and mighty eyes, signifying he still had the strength to resist them. "Those eyes. I hate those damn eyes," he shouted as he grabbed one of the bloodied kunai off the ground before ordering two of the others, "Hold him still." On command the two ninja grabbed hold of him. Naruto struggled against them, his reward was another shuriken being lodged into his chest and that same kunoichi from earlier repeatedly striking his privates with a heavy knotted rope. His eyes lit up as the pain coursed through his body. This gave the irate ninja the chance he needed and in one swift instant the right side of Naruto's world went forever black. Blood spewed from his eye as the ninja not so surgically relieved the blue eye of its socket. Naruto's screams become quieter as he saw the bloody bauble that was once his eye haplessly tossed to the ground and stare back at him. He was slowly starting to lose consciousness again. He defiantly locked eyes with his captors believing he was about to die and was content with seeking his revenge in the next life. "You still dare to look at us like that after seeing the results?" His captor said, "Still hold the bloody gore-covered kunai." "Atleastidotaftalok cough at Uruglius," Naruto answered while coughing up blood. In a what he believed to be his last act of defiance, he spat blood onto that ninja's face with a slight smile. "You little bastard," he yelled, readying himself to smash the monster over the head when one of the kunoichi present stopped by grabbing his arm. Now, it's pretty evident we can't have our fun with him if you keep him all to yourself," she said with a sickeningly sweet voice. Every good kunoichi knows a surefire way to destroy a man's pride. "Ladies." Following her signal, all the kunoichi in the room pushed past the men and encircled Naruto. "What do you mean?" he asked slightly calmer after compassing himself. "You break him," she answered matter-of-factly as she approached Naruto with the other kunoichi. Two of them spread his legs apart while the last tore off his frog-printed boxers. "You boys should leave the room, this may take a while," she stated as the other kunoichi softly laughed. The men all left the room, getting the general idea of what was about to happen. Naruto's screams once again filled the hall of the compound with new vigor as they continued to destroy the young Jinchuriki. The forest behind the Hokage mountain, unknown time. Naruto's captors stood at the top of a cliff overlooking a waterfall, holding his nude form by the neck. "Well, demon spawn, it's been fun while it lasted, but sadly all good things must come to an end, justice always wins in the end, and all that other crap," he said sarcastically. "Any last words?" Naruto remained silent. "No, been nice knowing ya, blonde," he smiled as he let go of the semi-conscious husk. He fell head first into the roaring white rapids at the bottom of the ravine. Naruto had no strength to resist the water, what strength he did have was being used to hold his breath as his head bobbed in and out of rapids. His stamina thoroughly drained, it wasn't long before the fatigue got the better of him and lost consciousness. He continued drifting downstream with the rapids until the current carried him to a calmer section of the river. He was awoken when his head hit a downed tree. Having recovered some of his energy, he used that tree to struggle to the muddy shore. He seemed to lose that when his body touched the earthen terrain at the tree's former base. Not wanting to become food for the local wildlife, he forced his body to its feet, trying to ignore the immense pain it caused. His blurred vision caught sight of something familiar that washed up on the riverbank. As he focused in on it, he realized it was his own orange trousers, albeit ripped, torn, waterlogged, and slightly faded. Putting them on was taxing, to say the least, but well worth it in his eyes. He began walking into the forest, each step more painful than the last. Naruto followed the trail of destructive trees until it became impossible for him to pass and he took an alternate route to nowhere. He continued walking when he heard crows calling and saw them picking at something ahead of him on the trail. As he approached their quarry, his presence scared the crows off and allowed him to get a good look at their meal. Laying down on the path was the young red-headed girl in tattered brownish-tan clothing. Believing she was dead, he walked past her, but her hand weakly reached out and grabbed hold of his ankle. Her action quickly caught his attention, but what she said struck him most. "Please kill me," she practically begged tearfully. The way she said it made him want to oblige her, but he decided against it after taking a better look at her. "No," was all he said as he bent down to lift her up onto his back, instantly regretting the strenuous activity. It was entirely understandable why the crows and he thought she no longer among the living. The smell she exuded was a combination of blood, excrement, and all the foulness the forest had to offer, much like himself. The only difference being he reeked of fish and far more bodily fluids. He continued walking down the trail, completely aware that they both would more than likely die before leaving the forest. Flashback end. Present. "You're a lot like me, we're both too stupid to know when to lay down die, cough," he said as blood erupted from mouth. She weakly opened her eyes to try and catch a gasp of his half-ladled left eye and slightly understood what he meant. "Teia, that's my name," she started, losing consciousness for likely the last time. "What's yours?" She passed out before he could answer. Chapter 1 Travelers. The morning of Naruto's departure, Kakashi had heard the news concerning the fate of his two students. He wasn't all that surprised to hear of Sasuke's sentence. The punishment for any ninja caught abandoning their village was always steep. Naruto, however, was a completely different story. Since their mission to Nami no Kuni, he had been showing more and more promise as a Konoha shinobi. Even though he was still an idiot, Kakashi was still proud of him. He knew Naruto would undoubtedly be depressed over his punishment, so he stopped by Ichiraku and got 4 bowls to go, 2 miso, a pork and a beef, each with the works. As he approached Naruto's apartment, he was trying to think ways to cheer him up. He didn't know how long it would until Jiraiya would be back in the village and didn't want Naruto spending however much time he had left locked away in his apartment. Kakashi finally arrived at Naruto's door and took a deep breath before knocking. "Hey Naruto," he called, but there was no answer. He knocked again thinking his student didn't hear him. "I've got your favorite ramen with me," Kakashi stated, listening for reaction, but none came. Strange, even if he was depressed that should have got some kind of reaction, he thought. Wondering what was up, he quickly picked the lock and entered the apartment. He entered Naruto's kitchen and sat the takeout on his table before he began searching the apartment. After looking around, he noticed several hints that told him Naruto hadn't been home for some time. Instead of waiting, he placed the food in the refrigerator and left the apartment, quickly relocking the door and disappearing in the swirl of leaves. Kakashi was starting to get too worried. He spent a little over an hour and a half searching for Naruto at his usual haunts, but still no Naruto. Not knowing where else to look, he turned to someone he knew could find him. "Fuchius no Jutsu, summoning jutsu," he said. "Hey Kakashi, do you want to feel my pads?" Pakin asked. "I've been trying this new shampoo and conditioner that does wonders for the coat." Kakashi smiled as he crouched down to Pakin. "Maybe later, I need your help looking for Naruto." "Do you remember his scent?" he asked. "It's hard to forget," he cringed as he sniffed the air, ramen, red bean soup, and farts. Kakashi just smiled, not knowing how to respond to that. "I got him this way," the little dog declared as he ran off. They ran for 10 minutes through the village and deep into the forest of death to the entrance of an old bunker where Pakin stopped. Kakashi didn't like the air the place gave off and was instantly put on high alert as he took a step forward. "Hold up Kakashi," Pakin warned. "I know," he said as they entered. They carefully walked the corridor heading down further and further underground until Pakin stopped at a heavily rusted steel hatch. Kakashi slowly opened the door and peered inside. After taking a quiet look, he pulled his head out and quickly wrote something down in a scroll. "Take this straight to the Hokage," he ordered and gave the scroll to Pakin. Pakin took the scroll and ran away, leaving Kakashi. After Pakin took off, Kakashi created 4 shadow clones to scout the area while he continues to search the base. Tsunade's office. Tsunade sat in her office facing 4 mountains of paperwork, several tick marks pulsing on her forehead. "Damn it," she yelled. Shizune ran into the office after hearing her master shout. "Shizune," she called. "I'm already here, Tsunade-sama," Shizune voiced her presence. Anbu recruitment report, revised patrol schedule, quarterly academy progress report, Jonin promotion exam requirements, she calmly stated while pointing to the stack of papers on her left before facing the larger stack on her right, sanitation and disposal procedures, public decency standard of Kunoichi attire, beautification and restoration of Konoha public park. She paused and looked up to Shizune. "Now with stack sounds like something the fucking leader of a hidden ninja village should be concerned with," she asked rhetorically. "Well, aside from the other two, the Kunoichi decency standard sounds like something you should address," she stated meekly. "The only ones worried about that are the one don't have anything to show off," she answered confidently while huffing out her chest. Shizune looked at Tsunade's chest and then to hers. Before Tsunade could blink, Shizune was crouched down, cradling herself in a corner with a depressing aura looming around her. "Sorry, but if you wanted men to pay more attention to you, just change your outfit a little," Tsunade said, trying to cheer her up. "You're almost as self-conscious as the Hyuga heiress." "Like that makes me feel any better," Shizune cried as Pakin appeared in a poof of smoke on Tsunade's desk. "Adim-sama, I have a message from Kakashi," the little ninkin informed. She opened the scroll and quickly read it over. Her expression suddenly became grim. "Nico, Tora," she muttered as the 2 unseen agents appeared. "Okage-sama," they both answered in unison. "Nico, assemble your squad, then retrieve Ibiki and Anko and take them to these coordinates." She handed them a note with a location on it. The 2 agents memorized it. "Or assemble a tracker squad and meet me at the same location," she ordered. "Hi," they both responded, them vanishing. "Shizune, let's go," she nods, and they vanished in a puff of smoke. Back at the bunker, Kakashi had just finished marking the path to the room he and Pakin located and was standing entrance waiting for orders from Tsunade. One of the shadow clone he created had dispelled itself after locating a trail leading deeper into the forest behind the Hokage monument. "Kakashi, report," he was brought out of his clone's memory by Tsunade's order. "Ma'am," Kakashi answered as they entered bunker. Kakashi reported everything that he experienced from the moment he entered the bunker with Pakin, then what his clones discovered. He finished his report just as they approached a familiar door. He reached for the door and stopped just inches away. "What wrong?" Tsunade asked. "Nothing, my last clone just dispelled, Anko and Ibiko are here," Kakashi explained as he opened the door. The instant the door opened, the foulest smell imaginable flew into their noses. Shizune covered her mouth and nose, while Kakashi and Tsunade were mildly taken aback. "How can you take that smell?" she asked, slightly gagging the words. "This is fairly common smell, but you never quite get used to it," Kakashi answered. "Where is that? I've never smelled anything like this before," she asked again. "Anbu headquarters, where rookie interrogators practice their skills," he stated as he and Tsunade trained the walls of the room, circling the bottomless chair in the center. "So, is this an Anbu outpost or something else?" Shizune thought out loud. "It could be," answered a deep voice from the door. "My predecessor once told me about hidden bunkers Anbu once used before the First Great War." "Ibiki, what do you make of this?" Tsunade asked the Scarred Master interrogator. "Purely amateur, no self-control whatsoever. This looks more like someone with a severe dominatrix fetish," he explained while examining the chair. "Reminds of Anko when she was just starting out." "I wasn't this bad," she huffed with a red tinge on her cheeks, "at least I cleaned up after myself." And she didn't deny the dominatrix fetish they all thought, staring at her. "What?" she wondered. "Adim-sama, I request we send for Hunter Nin to locate whoever was in this room and someone from the forensics division to do a full analysis of this bunker, paying special attention to this room," Ibiki requested. Tsunade smirked as 7 Anbu appeared at the door. "You heard him," 2 of them nodded and stood up. One agent with a wolf mask started sniff the air, while the monkey-masked one touched the wall behind her. "I'm picking up 9, no 10 different scents," Wolf stated. "This blood smells familiar, but where?" Wolf thought. "Yes, my insect also found 10 signatures," Monkey concurred, "they're following a trail." "Ma'am, I'm positive this blood belongs to the blonde in Kakashi Taichu's Genin cell," Wolf answered without a shred of doubt. Shizune was shocked to hear he was here and had the expression to match. "So, Naruto was here." Everyone turned to Tsunade. "You were right, Kakashi." "Tsunade-sama, what does this mean?" Shizune asked. Both Ibiki and Anko wondered as well. "Naruto's been missing since the council meeting last night, everyone, but Kakashi was surprised to hear of his disappearance. Kakashi went to visit him this morning and found he hadn't been home. After searching the village, he used one of his summons to track him and it led him here," she explained. "So that means last he was probably," Shizune was fearing the worst. "We can't think about that now, first we need to find him and anyone else who was in this room," Tsunade explained. "Ibiki, you and Anko will continue investigating this place. Tori, you and your team will track down all the people you picked up in here. Nico's team will assist in the capture. Kakashi, you will be in charge of the search operations. Shizune, you will send for a forensics team to assist in the investigation, then report the findings directly to me. Is everyone clear on their assignments?" "Ma'am," they all answered. "Good, this is an S-rank mission, no one is to know of this," Tsunade said as everyone left to begin their assignments. Back in the village, Haruno residence. Sakura hadn't left her room since Sasuke and Naruto had been admitted to the hospital. She felt horrible for what she said to Naruto earlier that week. Since that night, she was plagued with nightmares of his form and hardly slept. Each time she closed her eyes, that event played over and over in her mind, and she still couldn't figure out why she acted that way towards him. Truthfully, Naruto did scare her badly that night. His image covered in blood and burned flesh frightened her no end, but his eyes scared her the most. Those crimson eyes growing in the night terrified her and sparked emotions she never had towards her friend: confusion, fear, hate, and an impending sense of death. The last time she felt like that, she and Sasuke were facing down that Kusa-Kunoichi in the forest of death. She knew Naruto wouldn't do a thing to hurt her, but the way his eyes glowed told her otherwise. After being constantly nagged by that little voice in her head for days on end, she was finally able to gather up the courage to face him. She showered and dressed in her usual shinobi attire that doubled as her civilian clothes and left her house. On her way to the hospital, she passed a familiar restaurant and remembered it was Naruto's favorite place to eat, Ichiraku Ramen. She checked her pockets and was relieved she had enough to get both her teammates gifts. She got Naruto 2 bowls of miso ramen and Sasuke some large omyasubi with a kaba before continuing back towards the hospital. The walk to the hospital felt like an eternity since she was replaying that night in her head, but she finally arrived. Sakura approached the reception desk where 3 nurses were talking with Dr. "Excuse me," Sakura tried to get their attention. "Yes, miss," a nurse answered. "I'm here to see Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki." The doctor and nurses stiffened hearing those names, which didn't go unnoticed by Sakura. "I'm sorry, miss, but Uchiha-san is not allowed visitors, and Uzumaki-san," the doctor paused for a moment, "he was released yesterday." "I see, is there any way I can see Sasuke?" The doctor shook his head. "Okay, but can you make sure he gets this?" she asked, placing a bag on the desk in front her. "I'll see what I can do," he said, slightly unsure he could persuade the Anbu. "Thank you," she said as turned around to leave. Disappointed she couldn't see both of her teammates at the same time, she began looking for the one who already recovered. The first place she looked was his apartment. She rushed to Naruto's apartment as fast as she could. Naruto always complained that the glory that is Ichiraku must be savored fresh and praised for posterity. She giggled lightly, remembering his words. She didn't think that he even knew what the word posterity meant. It didn't take her more than 5 minutes of rooftop leaping to get to his apartment building. "Naruto, it's Sakura, I need to talk to you," she knocked, but no answered. "I brought you some Ichiraku, come on, open up." There was still no response. Sakura sighed, "Ramen's getting cold." Back with Kakashi's group at the cliff in the forest, Wolf sniffed the air. "Yeah, one scent breaks off here, they likely tossed someone off the edge." "The other scents head back towards the village," Monkey commented. "We'll have to split up here," Tora said. "Any objections, Kakashi Taichu?" "No, Wolf and I will follow the scent that breaks of here." "Tora, you take the other teams and capture the others," Kakashi ordered. "Catch up with us after the captures." "Nico, send a message to Tsunade-sama explaining the development," Kakashi instructed. Nico acknowledging his orders and began going through hand signs. "Fuchius no Jutsu, summoning jutsu," she said, and a hawk poofed into existence. She tied a message to its leg. "Take this to the Hokage," she said as it took off. They watched a bird fly over the tree line. Monkey stepped forward and lifted her hand to Kakashi. A single insect flew out of his sleeve to Kakashi's shoulder. "That is a queen, it releases pheromones that my insects can lock in on, she'll help us locate you," she explained. Kakashi nodded, then he and Wolf jumped over the edge and started running along the side of cliff as Tora and Nico's squads leaped into the trees. Sometime later, back in the village, unknown apartment, a man in his early 20s, ruffled black spiky hair, with lazy drooping eyes rose out of bed, grabbed his headband from the nightstand next to the bed, and tied it to his forehead. "MMMNN, Tetsuro, come back to bed," called a feminine voice hidden under a blanket behind him. "Didn't you get enough last night?" he smirked as he pulled up his pants. The woman behind him sat up the bed, letting the blanket fall to her waist. She had long dark brown hair that fell just past her shoulder, onyx eyes that held a dangerous glint, a toned, shapely body with fair skin and hardly a single blemish, and her breasts were on the higher end C cup, almost qualifying for D. She stretched for arms and yawned, before turning her attention back to the shirtless man. "You saying you don't want another go?" She pouted at him and pressed her breasts together with her biceps. Tetsuro smirked and figured he'd play her little game. Unknown rooftop several building away. The messenger appeared behind several Anbu agents. "Did it go according to plan?" Nico asked. The messenger was engulfed in a plume of smoke and revealed another cat mask Anbu. "According to plan, Taicho," she replied. "Well done, Komachi," Tora added, "those are the last two." Komachi perched herself between Nico and her partner Towa. They waited until their targets left the building and separated. Nico and Tora's teams ambushed the Tetsuro out of sight of civilians and other shinobi, and Mikan practically walked herself into custody. She never expected a thing until she saw Ryofu, Sato, Junpei, Mao, Jiro, Kurumi, and Zen chained up in a cell. When she turned to try and escape, she was blocked by the two squads sent to capture them. Panicking, she tried to run the opposite direction of the captains, but was knocked out by one of Komachi's zenbon hitting her behind the neck. She and Tetsuro were chained up to the wall next to Mao. After chaining them up, the squads disappeared to report back to Tsunade's office. Tora and Nico appeared in the office with their teams. They saw Kakashi and Wolf standing in front of them. Tsunade was sitting behind her desk with a distraught look on her face, with Shizune looking quite unnerved. "I see the situation just got more complicated," Tsunade frowned. "Tora, report." Tora stepped forward. "Ma'am, all targets have been secured. They're being held in an interrogation cell," Tora reported. "Good, Ibiki can take care of them then," Tsunade sighed. "Tora, as of this moment you and your team will be assigned a long-term A-rank mission to search for Naruto Uzumaki. Wolf will lead you to the border. A message has already been sent to Jiraiya, who will be following shortly." They vanished after she assigned them. "The rest of you are dismissed." The last 4 Anbu disappeared, but Kakashi was wondering why he wasn't assigned to search for his student as well and stayed. "Badim-sama, why wasn't I assigned to the search as well?" he all but yelled. "He's my student, I know him better than the trackers. I could help." "That is the problem," she stopped his pitch, "you're too close to this. I know you wish you were available for the Sasuke's retrieval mission, but the fact that you are close to Naruto can endanger the mission, and we don't have that time to make mistakes. Besides, I can't have you leaving the village so soon." "Why's that?" he asked. "Too many would take notice of your absence." She paused. "If certain council members catch wind that Naruto's missing, who knows what might happen." Kakashi caught on to who she was referring to and thought about the results of his sudden long-term absence affecting the search efforts, none of them pleasant. Kakashi backed off and made for the door. I understand, but I'd like to be kept up on the situation, Tsunade nodded. I also have one more question, if I may. What is it? She consented. Kakashi turned his head so his eye could look at her. Why did you push for Naruto's banishment? He asked as Shizune looked to her as well, wondering the same thing. I'll explain that when we find Naruto, she said it that as if she was promising that to herself more than him. Okay, was all he could saw as he left her presence. Tsunade then reached under her desk and pulled out a large bottle of sake. Tsunade-sama, is this really the time? Shizune voiced her outrage of her master's habit. If it isn't, then I don't know when, Tsunade said before taking a big gulp, besides you probably need this more than I do. Shizune couldn't argue her statement. Unknown location, the following morning. The groggy blue eye slowly opened to see an unfamiliar ceiling. He tried to get up, but his body wouldn't respond. He scanned his surrounding to try to figure out where he was, but nothing looked familiar. He was wrapped up comfortingly in a blanket when he suddenly felt his resting place jerk upward, allowing him to get a quick look around. He saw rugs, folded tents and posts, barrels, and crates around him. He glanced to his left to see a tuft of red hair in an adjacent bed wrapped up and constrained similar to himself. He figured he must be in a merchant wagon or maybe some other kind of caravan. He tried to move his body once more but still got no reaction. He thought back to what happened prior to his current predicament. The last thing he remembered was collapsing on a dirt road with a girl on his back, not much to go on. I see you're awake, young man, a voice called from by his feet. He could barely see where it came from. Who's there? He asked tiredly. An elderly woman strode up on his left between the beds with a younger woman so he could see her. The woman had her eyes closed and looked to be somewhere in her late 60s, while the girl appeared around 20. Both of them wore dark blue kimono, styled similar to Shizune's, with blood-red sashes. Who are you? He asked. Where am I? It's polite to first introduce yourself before asking for someone else, she retorted. He kept his mouth shut and only stared back at her. The woman took in his expression and the lifeless eye the boy had. Relax, young man, you and your companion are safe here, she sighed. Companion? The woman pointed to other bed. Oh, she's not your friend, she wondered. I've never seen her before, he stated. She decided to save this topic for when the sleeping redhead woke up. Anyway, my name is Yagusa Sugino, and this is my granddaughter Arisa, she introduced, and this the Spiraling Emotion Entertainment Troupe. Entertainment troupe, what the hell's that? He asked. We're a group of traveling performers. We operate like a traveling circus, only we do other types of shows as well, anything from concerts to classical theater, Arisa explained proudly. He didn't detect a lie in her words. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, he answered. Arisa was shocked to hear this boy's name. He noticed her shocked expression, but the elder woman didn't seem fazed at all. I see, that explains the seal on your stomach, she gathered. Naruto's eye flinched when she mentioned it. How do you know about that? He glared at her. Arisa made eye contact with him and felt a shiver run down her spine. Chigusa walked next to his bed and gently pulled the blanket away from him, then placed her hand behind his back. Arisa, help me, she ordered. She complied and helped Naruto into setting possession. Naruto looked down and saw his body almost completely wrapped in bandages. Chigusa hovered her right hand over his exposed torso. His seal reacted and revealed itself. He went wide-eyed at what just happened before she removed her hand and the seal concealed itself again. How? He wondered. She smiled kindly at him. Anyone proficient in the ways of Fuinjutsu can perform something like this, he eyed her suspiciously. I know about that seal on the back of your neck as well, young lady. All three turned their attention from Naruto's now seal-less stomach to the redhead laying in the next bed fully conscious. Her brown eyes flickered between Naruto, Chigusa, and Arisa. Naruto knew she must have been in a similar state as him if the bandages covering her and their prior conversation was any indication. The fuck you're looking at, she said. I already have an idea of what both you and his seals do, but I'd like to hear it from you, Chigusa asked. Fuck you old bitch, the redhead scowled. Maybe you'd answer if I give you this back. Chigusa reached behind her back and revealed a pure white flute. Teia's attitude instantly changed from annoyed to supremely pissed. Give that back, you half-died, disease-reddened, gray-haired thunderkind, she shouted as she struggled against the constraints. Arisa, seeing her agitation, tried to hold her down. Calm down, you'll only aggravate your injuries, Arisa struggled to keep the redhead in place. Get off me, you Shotokan pedophile slutbag, Teia insulted again. Excuse me, she was surprised to hear the irate girl call her that of all things. Don't play innocent, I saw you aying fucktards earlier, she reasoned. Arisa blushed at the implication. Naruto let out a sigh of relief, at least knew it was still there. Anyway, I believe you have something to explain us, the old woman spun the flute around her fingers for added effect. Teia huffed, she hated being on the losing side of fight more than anything. Fine, it's a cur. And please don't leave anything out, I can tell if you're lying or using half-truths. Contrary what you may believe, you both couldn't be in safer company, the old woman tried to reassure them. My name Teia and I was one of Orochimaru's elite guards, the seal on my neck is the curse seal of Danzamaru. It gives me more chakra, increases my strength, stamina, speed, endurance for a while, and if need be it'll change the way I look to compensate, afterwards I'm too weak to move, Teia explained. I see, so you are Teia of the North Gate. What is your family name? Chigusa inquired. Don't have one, that flute is the only thing that's really mine, she said. Tell me Teia-san, do you know any sound-based jutsu? Chigusa asked. Teia tensed at the mention of her specialty. Besides that pineapple rat bastard and his fan-fucking dyke of a girlfriend, no one escaped from a fight with her alive, the bingo book page on her only had her name, age, and picture. Why do you care? She asked. Chigusa sat down on her bed and faced Teia. My dear, sound jutsu are extremely rare in this day and age, but before the formation of the hidden villages, during the Sengoku period, they were fairly common, she answered, your flute is one such method used to employ it. Teia reasoned that she just deduced it because of the flute and a few history lessons. Shit, sound jutsu are my specialty, she answered. Thank you, she said before facing Naruto in the other bed, now young man, you said your name was Naruto. Uzumaki, Naruto Uzumaki, he clarified. My apology Naruto-san, you said Uzumaki, was that your father's name? She wondered. I don't know, I never knew my parents, he answered. I'm sorry for asking, but where were you born? From your appearance I'd say Kumagakure in Kaminari no Kuni, her baiting didn't go unnoticed by Teia or Arisa. Hanahagakure in Hai no Kuni, he corrected. I see, I knew of one Uzumaki in Hai no Kuni, but she died nearly 13 years ago during the Kyuubi attack, she informed, if you are in Uzumaki, you might be her son. Naruto's eye widened at that bit of knowledge. I was born the day the Kyuubi attack, cough cough, he overexerted himself. So you would be the right age, she held her chin, tell me, have you noticed anything strange about your chakra, like it changing its properties or strength? Naruto caught onto the bit about the Kyuubi. Not really, he thought back, but noticed something strange, I don't remember. Well can you tell us why you were so far from your village when we found you, they all wanted to know that. His mood darkened when she said that. I was banished from Konoha, that surprised all of them. I don't understand, that seal tells me you're a. Chigusa paused and compassed herself, can you explain the circumstances of your arrival? He had a confused look. What does circumstance mean? He asked. That surprised them. It means how you got here, fucktard, Teia said. He glared at her, he hated jabs at his intelligence. He then explained everything he could remember leaving in the bit about him being a Jinchuriki, not seeing much of a point in hiding it. No wonder you don't remember, I didn't know it was Konoha protocol to seal away memories, a single unintended tear rolled down his cheek, but your story has confirmed quite a few things. Like what? He asked. The fact you're a Jinchuriki all but confirms your mother's identity, and the fact you have the willpower to carry someone as far as you did when you yourself were a hairpin away from dying from fatigue, means you also might have their bloodline, she explained. What does me having a bloodline matter now, I'm dying, he shouted. That bloodline could save your life if you unlock it, she claimed. Before he could ask for the details, she held up her hand to stop him. I can't explain anything more about your clans or bloodlines until Teia-san agrees to let us seal her curse mark, the old woman stated catching Teia's attention. What the hell, cough cough, just tell me, he coughed out. Her seal might have a sharing property that allows Orochimaru access to her mind, Arisa chimed in. I ain't got a problem, Teia said. Really? I thought it'd take more convincing than that. Chigusa asked with Arisa nodding in agreement. Nope, I was going to abandon him after I failed my last mission, Teia answered and looked at Naruto, fucktard and his friends stalled us too long, and we ran out of time. I never even met you before, Naruto claimed. We were enemies on our last mission, she answered, I was going to make a run for it after I killed that pineapple fucker when that bitch showed up and dropped a fucking forest on me. I see, so you already had plans to seal your curse mark, Teia nodded. Chigusa stood up and hobbled to the entrance with Arisa. We'll begin the sealing after you've rested properly. I'm sorry Naruto-san, but you'll have to wait just a little longer, she apologized and left. I'll bring you both something to eat later, Arisa promised leaving the two of them alone. After Teia was sure they were gone, she spoke again. Fucktard, he ignored her, hey fucktard, I'm talking to you, fucktard, fucktard. What the hell do you want? He asked annoyed. Why did you help me? She wondered. He looked at her and they locked eyes, determined blue met determined brown. They stared silently at each other before he looked away and closed his eye. Teia continued to look at him. I don't remember, she could tell he was lying. She vaguely remembered asking him that question before. Forget it, she turned away from him. Thanks, Naruto, she whispered positive he didn't hear her. You're welcome, he answered to her surprise, just stop calling me fucktard. She began whispering obscenities under her breath. Isn't that cute, Arisa thought before leaving to prepare their meals with a smile. Back in Konoha, Anbu torture and interrogation. Wakey, wakey, a woman shouted as she threw water on 9 unsuspecting individuals chained to a wall. They all shouted. Anko-senpai, Mikan said exhaustively, why are we here? Oh, playing dumb I see, Anko said, rubbing her chin inquisitively, that's not gonna help you. We already found the bunker and know exactly what happened there, and I gotta say you chicks are sick, even by my standards. They were all shocked that someone found the bunker already. They assumed they would have at least a day to clean up and hide it before someone stumbled across it. Tsunade-sama isn't very happy with you all. She had a real soft spot for the brat. Anko grinned, laced with venom, and she has a few questions that need answering. Each of them witnessed her interrogation methods at one point or another, and their fear was evident. It was only compounded when Ibiki walked into the room and they promptly pissed themselves. I hope you enjoyed the sunrise, cause you'll never see another one, he said as he flew through a series of hand signs. Anko. She huffed her shoulders and snapped her fingers. The chains binding their prisoners unlocked and they fell to the floor on their knees. Guchius. Jigoku Daidokoro, summoning. Hell's Kitchen. He said. The world around them turned pitch black and flames grow and encircled the cell's inhabitants as a thorned cage fell, trapping them all inside. The temperature in the cage shot up tremendously, but the 2 interrogators were noticeably unfazed. 36 grotesque demonic hands slowly pierced through the darkness, then shot out, each grabbing one of the culprit's wrists and ankles. After all the hands were latched onto their targets, a giant shadowy figure grew out of the darkness behind Ibiki and Anko outside the cage. Its clawed hands reached out and grabbed the cage, like a child holding a present Christmas morning, as it opened its glowing red eyes. The hands began pulling them until they suspended in the air, inches off the ground. Anko saw the culprit sweat and drool all over themselves and grinned. It's okay to breath, she said, snapping them out of their trance, letting them remember how to breath again. This is how this jutsu works. Ibiki paused to get their attention. We will ask you questions. If you lie to us at any point, in any way, a pair of hands will let go. That means lie twice and all the hands holding you will let go. When that happens you will be cooked alive in the fires below us. They all were too scared to answer, except one. Please, I'm innocent, it was their idea, Jiro claimed frantically. Anko and Ibiki both nodded as if they actually believed him, and the hands holding his ankles let go and disappeared. Jiro, be quiet, Kurumi ordered. Shut up, it's your fault we're in this. The hands holding his wrists let go and he fell onto the floor. They breathed a sigh of relief, their friend didn't die. You tried to trick us, you bastard. I'm still Ali. He was cut by a sickening squashing sound. He heard his friend screaming and crying out his name as he looked down and saw a bloody wooden stake. I didn't trick you, Ibiki informed him, much to Jiro's horror. He looked to Mao. Now, I was all he could say before the demonic skewer pulled him in the fires below. She screamed his name and struggled against her bonds. She cried as she turned to Jiro's killers. I swear I'll kill you, Mao damned. Somehow I doubt that, Ibiki challenged. Haptism's Corner. If anyone's wondering what this section is, it's a library of custom jutsu made by yours truly. Guchius. Jigoku Daidokoro, summoning Hell's Kitchen. Rank. B. Classification. Ninjutsu, space-time ninjutsu. Class. Offensive, supplementary. Range. Short. Hand signs. Board dog bird monkey ram. This jutsu was created by Ibiki Marino, head of Konohagakure torture and interrogation, for information gathering. The technique summons apparitions of demons to restrain and intimidate the target or targets. The temperature in this space is 95 degrees Fahrenheit to the targets. Anyone who can perform this technique are immune to the temperature shift. If a target remains silent after a question is asked for 2 minutes or lies to him twice, they are dropped into a raging inferno after being skewered in through the stomach. Chapter 2 Bingo Books. Just after noon, the spiraling emotion entertainment troupe. Hello you two, Arisa greeted cheerfully, as promised, I brought your meals. Naruto just looked at her, not having slept at all, while Teia groaned and faced her. She placed 2 steaming bowls on a table between their beds. She then undid the bindings keeping Teia's arms in place and helped raise her into sitting position. Dear, be careful, it's still pretty hot, she warned, handing Teia the steaming bowl of beef stew before taking a seat next to Naruto with the other bowl in hand. Dear, say ah, she asked with a modest amount of stew in her spoon. He looked at her hesitantly before complying to her request. It's pretty good, Arisa smiled at his comment. Thank you, it's my specialty, she said. Tastes like dog piss, Teia interjected, before gesturing to her curse seal. When's the old skank gonna get to work, Lil Miss Pita Bear? Arisa didn't take kindly to the remarks, but answered anyway. She's working on the seals now, Arisa informed. It should be ready by the time we make camp for the night. What do you plan to do with us? He asked. Absolutely nothing, she answered, gesturing for him to open his mouth again. Random kindness to a Jinchuriki and a Kunoichi with a bounty, Teia commented. Do we look retarded? Just take it on faith, she suggested with a cheerful expression. We're not going to turn either one of you in anywhere. Is that really so hard to believe? Yes, they both deadpanned. That's too bad, she paused, but you're right in thinking we have other motives involving the both of you. And they are, Teia glared. Grandmother can explain everything after the sealing, but she paused. But what? He asked. I can tell you both one thing, she answered. What is it? They both became impatient. It's she drew them in with a smiled, secret. The fucking answer is that, Teia yelled. You'll just have to wait and see, she said cheerfully as she walked towards the entrance. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. She winked at them before leaving their sight. What's that slut think we're gonna do, give each other a reach around, she deadpanned. Not me, he answered, what do you think they're up to? Don't know, not like we can do a damn thing anyway. I can't walk, and you, she looked at him, well fuck. Thanks, I really needed to hear that, he remarked sarcastically. Igusa's quarters, in another part of the caravan. Igusa sat formally at her desk, writing something with a brush. She held her loose sleeve in a way as not to mistakenly mess it with ink or smear her work as Arisa entered her quarters. Is it done? The old woman asked. Yes, I gave them their food, like you asked, Arisa reported. They'll be asleep shorty. Thank you, Arisa-chan. I doubt they would be able to sleep peacefully with their apprehension towards us, Chigusa stated as she continued writing. Can you summon Matsu and Wabasuk for me? I have something I need taken care of. Yes, grandmother, Arisa acknowledged before leaving. Several minutes later, she returned with a woman, a slightly taller man. The woman looked to be in her late teens to early 20s. She had hazel eyes with a pair of round glasses and long dark amber hair. The man next to her had dark hair and looked to be in his mid-20s and wore box-framed glasses. You called for us, Chigusa Baba? Matsu asked. Yes, you two are aware of our guests, correct? She asked. Of course, Elder, Wabasuk answered. Word of their presence has spread throughout the troop. That can be a problem. She stopped writing and rubbed her chin. Arisa-chan, make sure to tell everyone they are not to spoke of our guests from this point on. I have reason to believe trackers will be sent to capture them. I want you two to backtrack to the Tenchi Bridge and cover up our trail. Pay extra attention to the small details and especially since Konoha is famous for their trackers. Igusa tosses them shredded orange and brownish tan articles of clothing. These are our guests' old clothing. After you cover the trail, create a few false leads away from us. Matsu grabbed the clothes cautiously with a repulsed look on her face. Any specific direction? Matsu asked. I'll leave that to you, she answered. Go quickly. They were about to leave when Chigusa asked for Arisa to stay. Matsu and Wabasuk left and begin preparing for their mission. Meanwhile, Chigusa hands Arisa a scroll with a spiral seal on it. Send this scroll by messenger hawk to Master Katakura. Arisa was surprised to hear his name at this point. Grandmother, is this wise? We haven't even confirmed their identities or if they have the bloodlines yet. Arisa asked. They are who we think they are, Chigusa confirmed. When we visited them earlier, I checked them. Teia-sama is a legitimate member of her clan. Naruto-sama, however, may be the successor we've been waiting for. Arisa went stiff as a board and slowly looked down at the scroll in her hand. I'll send the scroll right away, she declared, before quickly dismissing herself. The dragon's will must be preserved, she sighed. Konoha's strict correctional facility, courtyard. Amongst the stone and piles of rubble where Konoha's heaviest offenders toiled away, a single serpent navigated itself past guard and prisoner alike. Its destination a certain occupant of the Konohagakure penal system. This one stood close to 6 feet, his long white hair and visage dirtied by his daily labors. The snake made its presence known only to him. The man seeing the snake kneels down conspicuously, as if to nurse an injury near his feet, and allowed the snake to slither up his sleeve and conceal itself where none would take notice. Kusa no Kuni, Tenchi Bridge. Matsu and Wabasuk arrived in the forested area on the high no Kuni side of the Tenchi Bridge. The road itself played host to an unusually high number of travelers and peddlers for the season. That would serve to their advantage. They had to be careful not to draw attention to themselves from any possible shinobi hiding in the crowd, so they changed out of their normal blue and red troop uniforms for more modest clothing, with cloth knapsacks containing their gear. They each made sure not to wear their radios in the crowd, for fear they may be spotted. Once they were prepared, they approached the road from a cliffside path next to the forest and blended into the crowd disguised as a couple. They followed the current of peddlers heading towards the Kusa no Kuni's main shipping lane and spoke quietly to one another so none but them could hear. This crowd's doing a fine job covering our trail and the air's thick with spice and perfumes, Matsu sneezed. Merchants and traders are thick in this area, Wabasuk stated. This road also branches off to Taki, Hai, Aim, Tsuchi, and serves as Kusa's main shipping lane. We could use the travelers to spread out leads over a wide area while we finish masking the trails, she thought aloud. Isn't Aim still a no-fly zone? Wabasuk nodded. They're extremely paranoid. Less than a dozen merchants and traders are allowed outside the country at any given time, he informed. We could make stronger leads to both Aim no Kuni and Tsuchi no Kuni, she figured. Konoha, Aim, and Iwa are enemy powers, so that would slow them down quite a bit. And buy us all the time we need. He stopped. Their attention was immediately turned to shadows gliding through the woods. They made no action to display their awareness and continued conversing amongst themselves. Speak of the devil, those are Aim shinobi. Are they onto us, he wondered. It's something else, Matsu confirmed. They slowly scanned the immediate area for anything out of place. They're 11 o'clock, the brunette next to the cart with the sake barrels, she pointed out. They watched her and spied a slightly taller bald man, brushed against her hand. Matsu and Wabasuke noticed tiny rolled up slips of paper being quickly exchanged through their fingers. Matsu smirked as a light blush tinted her cheeks. Maybe we can use this, she uttered as she left her companion for the woods. I'll meet you at the crossroad, be right back. He watched her walk off and had an idea of what she was planning. I better get started, he thought as he watched the bald man walk on ahead. 10 minutes later, in the forest next to the road, Matsu concealed herself with Doten. Maguragakur no Jutsu, Earth Release. Hiding like a mole jutsu and laid in wait watching the Aim shinobi leap past her. She was about to reveal herself and capture the last one when she saw him stop on a branch. He took out a kunai and marked the trunk of the tree he stood on. A marker. She spied, they must have some backup trailing. That means that girl's probably not one of their spies. Are they planning to ambush her or is there something else? Matsu decided to stay hidden and wait for the straggler. She didn't have to wait long for the last one to arrive. He landed on the same branch his friend had and looked at the marker. There you are, she grinned at her target. She slowly rose up out of the ground as he leapt away and began following him. Before he noticed her presence, she began another jutsu. Meijin. Maigo 98, demonic illusion crying lost child, she whispered. Meanwhile back with Wabasuke, on the main road, he continued to follow the bald man, careful not to make his intentions known. The man stopped next to a two-horse-drawn wagon with a tarp covering the cargo. He followed them to the crossroad, anxious to see where they were going. When the driver didn't turn the wagon, he knew where they were heading, the Tsuchi no Kuni border. He moved to intercept the wagon, keeping his hands concealed. Oten. Cage Bunshin, Earth Release. Shadow Clone, he created a clone underground and had it perform Oten. Shinju's Anshu no Jutsu, Earth Release Headhunter Jutsu, to grab one of the horse's hooves mid-stride and jerked it at a painfully awkward angle. The action caused the horse to buckle and injure itself before toppling over, taking the other horse and the wagon with it. Both the driver and passenger were catapulted from the wagon onto the hard ground. Some of the other travelers, who witnessed this, rushed over to help. Among those passerby was a doctor who aided the wagon's former occupants, while others sought to right the wagon. Wabasuke and another man tended to the horses. There, he calmed the horse, before looking down, can you keep her calm? The other man complied. Wabasuke knelt down on his knee and pulled out a haggard pieces of orange and tan cloth from his pack and double-tied them firmly, but not too tightly to the horse's ankle. It doesn't look broken, maybe she just tripped on something. The other man eyed the ground around the wagon and saw a small hole. He walked over to examine it. Yeah, looks like she tripped in this pothole, the man announced. After riding the wagon and horses, the doctor helped the passengers back onto the wagon. I'd get yourselves and your horses checked out in the next town, it's not too far ahead, the doctor suggested. Thanks, we'll do that, the bald man agreed as he thanked the people around him. By this time Wabasuke had long faded into the crowds. With Matsu and the Aim shinobi, in the forest. Come on, you can last a little longer, Matsu goaded, or do you want to see my little friend? No please, anything but that, the Aim ninja cried, I can't take it anymore. That's really all you got. Matsu was annoyed as she put a tattered rag doll of her likeness, grinning widely with serrated teeth back into her pack. I live in my mother's basement, my girlfriend left me for my sister, and I'm still a virgin, the quivering shinobi rambled. Matsu gave him a pathetic look. Whoa, I did not need to know that, she claimed as she broke off an extra thick branch from the tree above them. The Aim shinobi cringed when she approached him with an evil grin on her face. He curled up into the fetal position as her eyes seemed to glow a frightening red and her teeth jaged. Don't worry, you won't feel a thing, she looked ecstatic drawing back the log in her grip, her eyes half-lidded, sweat dripping down her face, with a crooked smile marring her face as she laughed maniacally. Say, good night, she bashed him over the head. She was careful not to kill him, he would have concussion at the very least, but that wasn't her problem. She pulled out a tag from her pack with the kanji for memory written on it and began a string of hand signs. Shishufu and Ryu. Yomi no Shinyaku, 4-symbol seal style invading darkness, the tag in her hand stood erect as she placed the tag on his forehead. The kanji faded away after she placed it. She took back her tag and turned him over so his face was in the dirt and opened his pouch with his ninja tool. She dug in her pack and pulled out shards Naruto and Teia's clothing. She took out all of his kunai and shuriken and placed it on the ground. She tore both pieces of clothing, folded them thinly, and tucked them at the bottom of his pouch before placing the tools back inside. She then took his ninja wire and removed his pants and scarf. She turned his pants inside out and used the ninja wire to quickly stitch the orange cloth to the region where his pouch was placed. After she finished, she put his pants back on and sewed the tan cloth to the middle part section of his scarf before re-wrapping it around his neck. All done, she smiled at a job well done and was about to walk away, almost forgot. She turned around and tossed a branch she clocked him with on top of him haphazardly. Now completely satisfied with a job well done, she left to catch up with her partner before the unconscious mama's boy's friends showed up. Konoha's strict correctional facility, courtyard. The whistle blew signaling the prisoners it was time to return to their cells. They lined up in front of the entrance to the main facility where the guards would take their tools and check them over for anything that shouldn't be on them. The man with long white hair placed his hammer in a pile with the other hammers on the table where one of the guards kept inventory. He then proceeded down the corridor to a secondary station with more guards standing watch. "Place your hands in the circles and spread your legs," one guard ordered. He complied and placed his hands in the red circles on the walls and spread his legs. Two of the guards patted him down and checked his entire body. "He's clean," one guard confirmed. He was about to walk away when the guard grabbed his shoulder. "You're cut, get that checked out," he said, eyeing the prisoner's ripped sleeve and red-tinted bicep. "I will," the prisoner answered. He walked back to his cell and waited until after dinner to acknowledge the snake's presence. Soon the lights went out and only the moonlight and faint lighting from the balcony railings lit the prison cells. After the last guard passed, he stretched out his arm, beckoning the snake to reappear. Sure enough, the snake slithered out off his sleeve and regurgitated a purple message scroll. He unfurled it and began reading. "The time has finally arrived for you to be of use to me. I have forgiven you for failing to retrieve the forbidden scroll of seals, and now I have another mission for you. You are to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha from the Anbu detention wing near your location. I have arranged for you to be assisted by another one of my agents on duty the night after you retrieve this message. After you secure the boy, bring him to me. I will have a squad waiting for you both at the original meeting place. You know what your reward will be if you succeed, or should you fail me again, Mizuki?" "Yes, Lord Orochimaru," he grinned as he heard footsteps. The message and snake disappeared in a puff of smoke as two overly sized figures appeared outside Mizuki's cell. The spiraling emotion entertainment troupe campsite, Tsuchi no Kuni. The tall man in his mid-20s wearing oval-framed glasses with dirty blonde hair walked into Chigusa's quarter. He bowed to her and spoke. "Chigusa-sama, the area is prepared and we await your arrival," he informed. "Also Matsu and Wabasuke have returned. They are ready to report the mission." "Thank you, Hate. Could you take these scrolls and align them to the ceiling array as well?" She passed him for the scrolls. "Have a barrier prepared as well. The last thing we need is Iwa noticing what we're doing." He left her to finish his task. Matsu and Wabasuke entered after Hate left. "I trust your mission was a success?" she asked. "Yes, everything went according to plan," Wabasuke reported. "Any hunter ninja will have great difficulty following us. We created leads into AIM and further into Tsuchi away from this location." "Perfect," she smiled and nodded cheerfully. "Also, we encountered some AIM ninja during the mission. They weren't aware of our presence and I was able to extract some information from one of them," Matsu said. Chigusa quirked an eyebrow and wondered what she found out. "What kind of information?" she asked. "Apparently that Tsuchikage has a mission request for them. They were making contact with one of his agents on the shipping lane," her report intrigued Chigusa. "Do you know what the mission is?" Matsu shook her head. "Sorry, if I tried to secure that bit of intel, I would have been forced to reveal myself," she answered. "Too bad," Chigusa shrugged. "You two completed the main assignment and came back with a bonus. Why don't you grab some dinner and call it a night? After the sealing we will be leaving." They both bowed to her and wished her a good night before departing. With Arisa and Naruto in Teia's quarters, Arisa had just finished unbinding Teia from the bed. She shook her softly and quietly asked her to wake up so Naruto wouldn't hear her. The sleeping drug she gave them earlier had long since wore off and slowly she began to stir. "Teiya-san, it's time to start the sealing." She opened her eyes. Once Arisa saw Teiya open her eyes, she ushered over two men each dressed in the troops uniform. The two carefully lifted Teiya off the bed and placed her in a stretcher beside it. They carried her out of her quarters and headed towards the wooded area next to the camp. This was the first time Teiya had seen the outside in some time and she took advantage of it. She saw little campfires and what looked to be little families huddled around cooking and laughing together. When the two men carried her by them, they all stopped talking amongst themselves and stared at her, but what was strange was they didn't have the scared or angry look she had experienced throughout her life. They all had a strange expression between shocked and happy, like were looking at some long-lost family member they hadn't seen in decades. She heard children whisper questions to their parents. "Mommy, is that her? And who's that lady, Dad? were spread around, each question was hushed by said parent. This awkward pattern continued until she was out of their sight. As they entered the woods, she got a broader view of the campsite and saw oxen being fed next to a large train-like trailer. Before she could focus on any of its details, her view was obstructed by the trees. They entered deep the woods into a small clearing where Chigusa stood with two other men. In the center of the clearing, two circles with 4 scrolls stretching through the center were pinned down with kunai. They sat her down in front of the old woman where the scrolls intersected. A tall blond man waved for the other men to follow him and they disappeared in the woods. Teia noticed they didn't head to the camp but instead spread out around the clearing until they formed a box perimeter. Teia was brought out of her observations when Arisa grabbed the front of her kimono and gently pulled it down, revealing her chest for the world to see. A Shotokan with lesbian urges, Teia snidely smirked, "Mommy and Daddy must be so proud." Teia saw Arisa blush a little before smiling back at her. "You know, I was wondering why you were so rude all the time." She looked down a bit, but now I see why. Teia didn't understand what she was talking about until she followed Arisa's gaze to her chest and instantly understood. Arisa stood up and stretched, while making subtle gestures that she had the superior equipment compared to Teia. "They'll be sagging any day now, Granny," she countered. "That's enough," Chigusa ordered. "Arisa, help me." Arisa crouched back down and started drawing seals on Teia's front side while Chigusa did the back. While they wrote the seals, Teia sat perfectly still, watching them and assessing their skills. "Hey," she called, and the tall blond man nodded. "Begin," ordered Hey the other men. Shikakureta Hashira, 4 concealed plars, they all shouted as they slammed their hands together. They each gave off a blue aura for a split second before a ray of light stretched out from each of them and connected to the other, enclosing the clearing. When the rays of light were connected, a new light shot skyward from each man, then angled itself towards the center. The clearing was now locked in a pyramid-shaped barrier, concealed by the treeline of the surrounding woods. Teia observed this and continued assessing them. The barrier they're using is weaker than the Maishishi engine, 4 Violet Flames battle encampment, but it's the same type and it's a collaboration jutsu. They must have had teamwork drills or maybe squad training. Then there's these two." She looked down at Arisa writing seals quickly on her. "I thought this bitch was a medic, she writing too cleanly to be new to Fuinjutsu. She's had a lot of training, same for the old bitch. I'm sure she's blind, but to be able to sense and seal my curse seal, she must be a master. So why the fuck are they helping me? Teia-san, are you alright? You seem awfully nervous." Arisa asked, sensing her anxiety. "Just hurry the fuck up, pedo," she scowled. Arisa sighed and got back to work. After a few minutes they finished the last of the seals and a wrinkled hand reached over shoulder. "These pills will temporarily suppress your chakra and ease the strain on your body a little." Teia looked at the pills wearily before popping them in her mouth and swallowing. "Are you ready?" Teia took a deep breath. "Just do it," she answered. Chigusa began a series of 20 hand signs and placed her hand on Teia's curse seal of Danzamaru and focused her chakra. "Fujihoin, evil sealing method," the old woman called. Teia screamed as the pain erupted from the back of her neck. The fresh inscriptions on her body lifted themselves off her skin, along with the ones written in the scrolls, and began converging on the glowing curse seal. Once all of the inscriptions encircled the curse seal, they compressed themselves, and the curse seal stopped glowing. The back of Teia's neck throbbed and pulsed with small spikes of pain, but as the throbbing stopped, so did the pain. Arisa gently put Teia's kimono back on and laid her down on the ground. Teia was slowly losing grip of her consciousness. Hayate released the barrier as they all breathed a sigh of relief. The men returned back to the center and started rolling up the scrolls. Arisa had just helped Teia back on the stretcher and asked the two of them to help carry the young redhead back to camp. "We will continue our conversation when you awake in the morning, Teia-sama," the old woman promised. "Return her to her quarters." The men bowed and carried her away. "Teia-sama." She thought being carried away. Dibano-kuni, unknown compound. Guards at the gate stood by watching rice fields of the surrounding area, sometimes nodding off in the night silence when a large shadow caught their attention. They looked up and saw a hawk soar over the walls and land on the watchtower on the far side of the compound. The guard in the watchtower took the message attached to the hawk's talon. He saw the scroll had a spiral seal and knew who it was for and from. He ran down the flight of stairs to the courtyard, past the others guarding the large courtyard. He ignored the guards and ran straight through a large dojo to the back garden. When he arrived, he saw a man standing in the moonlight with formal white robes with a katana in hand, surrounded by 6 light stone lanterns. His breathing was slow, almost non-existent. He rose his blade slowly in his left hand and gripped it with his other. He slowly tilted the blade and angled across his face from the left side as his stance lowered. The moonlight gleamed off the blade and twitched ever so slightly. The guard was glued in place. He blinked and the man gone, leaving only a trail of dust. He followed the trail of dust and saw the man outside the circle of lanterns with his blade thrust out in front of him. The guard suddenly remembered why he's there and approached the man in white. "Master Katakura," he called. The man in white turned his attention towards the guard. "You have a message from Chigusa-sama." Katakura took the scroll and began reading to himself. The guard watched his master's expression for any trace of bad news. Katakura's face suddenly became very stern. "You," he looked at the guard, "get someone to help you clean up this mess. We have preparations to make." He walked off leaving the dumbfounded guard. "Mess?" He looked around. He was about to leave when the heads of each lantern suddenly split down the middle before crashing onto the sandy terrain with a light thump, leaving each of the candle light and untouched. A spiraling emotion entertainment troupe. The following morning, Naruto began to stir from his deep sleep when the light of the sun shined down on his uncovered eye and a playful tone filled the air. He slowly opened his groggy eye and looked to where the sound was coming from. He gazed at a person standing at his bedside and blinked a few times to force the sleep away. The tone was coming from Arisa as she tended to his bandages with his blanket removed. He looked from her to his body to assess his own damage. He was surprised to see that aside from his triceps his entire body was wrapped in tightly in bandages. Arisa felt him twitch when she finished wrapping his arm and looked up. "Finally awake," she said. "You slept the whole day away. Teia-sama's curse seal is already sealed and once grandmother arrives we can finally answer any questions you may have." She was remarkably cheery considering she was likely tending to a paraplegic. He tried to shift his body over a little to get out of the sun, but couldn't so much as move a muscle. She saw him trying to move his head out of the light, so she walked over to the head of his bed and stood on her toes to close the opening where the light was hitting him. While thankful she closed the opening, he unintentionally got an awfully long glance of her round bottom and blushingly averted his gaze away to where Teia was laying intently reading a bottle before placing it back on the table. "There, do you feel better now?" Arisa looked down at him. "I still can't feel my everything, if that's what you mean," he deadpanned. "But that means the medicine's working," she claimed as she gently stuck an IV in his wrist. "You'll feel like that for a while, about a month give or take." Naruto did not like that answer, but before he could say anything she moved around the bed to the table between him and Teia. She took the bottle Teia was reading from the table and placed 2 pills on her hands. "Ear open wide," she gestured for him to open his mouth and whispered, "They'll help you recover." He looked at her oddly and took the pills. "Are you two done playing grab ass?" Teia spoke. "When's the old bitch gonna get here?" "She'll be here in a bit," she answered. "Do you two want something to eat while you wait?" "How about a nice helping of get her crusty old ass in here?" Teia answered, her irritation blatant in her voice. "That will hardly be necessary." The old woman arrived without any of them noticing. Arisa moved out of her way and set a chair down between the 2 patients. "I believe you both have questions for me?" she asked, with a tad bit of sarcasm. Teia was about to ask when Naruto beat her to the point. "Who are my parents, who are you people, and what is my bloodline?" He bombarded the old woman. The old woman expected these questions and answered them accordingly. "I believe your mother was Uzumaki Kushina, the previous Kyuubi Jinchuriki. I don't know who your father is, but judging from your appearance, I'd say Namikaze Minato, the yellow flash." Teia looked at him and burst out laughing. "Stubby here's the red hot habanero and the yellow flash's son." She started laughing again, but stopped when she felt her chest contract painfully. "Yeah right, he didn't believe her assessment, how would you know?" Naruto referenced her blind condition. "You do favor him a lot Naruto-sama," Arisa consigned. "That's my best guess," the old woman affirmed. "Spiky blonde hair and blue eyes are a rare combination for anyone. The only Konoha ninja I've ever seen with that combination was Minato Namikaze." He thought back to his time in the village and realized he never saw anyone with features similar to him. "They both dead during the Kyuubi incident." Chigusa paused, "and most Jinchuriki have always had some connections to the reigning village leader. For your time it would have been him." Naruto was gaping, the chances of the Yondaime Hokage being his dad just skyrocketed. "Your mother was originally from Yuzushi Agakure in the former Yuzu no Kuni. She was the 3rd child of the Uzumaki clan head. The Uzumaki clan was renowned for their mastery of Fuinjutsu, which led to its destruction," she explained. "Your grandfather and aunt stayed behind and helped many of Yuzu's people evacuate. When Yuzu fell, many of the clans and citizens were scattered across the elemental nations. Unfortunately, members of the Uzumaki clan were hunted down and eliminated. Your uncle, Master Ujima, took your mother to Konoha. When she was safe, he left to find any other survivors. Sadly he died almost 15 years ago. This troop owe him a debt we could never repay." "What did he do for you?" he wondered. "Most of the people in this troop are the survivors Master Ujima rescued," she answered. "He opened his clan's knowledge of Fuinjutsu to us to help us survive." "Are there any Uzumaki here?" She shook her head sadly. "Are there any Uzumaki left?" "Some time ago, during the Second Shinobi War, we got word of a small family of Uzumaki living in Aim no Kuni that inspired some hope, but when we finally arrived they were already made casualties of the war. For all we know, you are the last Uzumaki. What kind of Kekai Genkai did his clan have?" Teia asked before the grief could set in. Not the Uzumaki clan, she corrected, only the main branch possessed the Dakuganryu, one-eyed dragon, bloodline. What's the Dakuganryu? He asked. It's a Kekai Genkai that enabled the possessor to alter the physical and spiritual energies in their bodies with mental energy to create an energy fundamentally different from chakra. Its users also have a talent for shape manipulation jutsu. I remember certain clan members being able to create chains, blades, and other things out of chakra. If memory serves, your grandfather was the only one who completely unlocked it, she thought back, even though it scared him to death. What could be so scary about that? Teia chimed in. I, unfortunately, do not know. Master Yajima never went into the details and he was very cryptic about it. He told me, his father always said he wasn't supposed to have the ability, that it was waiting for someone who could succeed the old dragons. Whatever that meant, she ignored their curious faces and continued, we plan on taking advantage of your Kekai Genkai to help restore your chakra network, but to make sure the process goes smoothly, I've contacted one of the only people in the world who has intimate knowledge of your bloodline. Why would someone from outside his clan know secrets about their bloodline? Teia knew secrets like that were always heavily guarded. Naruto-sama's Kekai Genkai doesn't originate from the Uzumaki clan. Naruto was surprised to hear that it was integrated into the main branch through marriage. During the Sengoku period when the hidden villages first started to form, a man went to Uzushiogakure seeking asylum. It was granted and he joined the village. Eventually he fell in love and married the Uzumaki clan head's only daughter. Dude had balls, Teia interjected, classic spy maneuver. And normally we would agree, if she were from any one other clan, she paused, but Uzumaki women tend to have very destructive personalities. This woman in particular tended to eviscerate things when she got excited. He was no exception. She was the butch, he was the bitch. Teia looked at Naruto, your family was a bunch masochists. Naruto didn't know how to respond to that, if anything it made way too much sense. Anyway, the bloodline originated from that man. The person we're going to see is a descendant of that man's vassals, she claimed, he is also a good friend of your grandfather. Okay, I just have one last question, he stated, you knew my mom, what was she like? I only saw her when she a child, but I'm positive I have a bingo book with her picture in it. When she was a child, she reminisced, she was temperamental, easily excitable, tomboyish and a chatterbox. She was also a little on the chubby side, coupled with her hairstyle made her look a lot like Big Red Tomato. She always shouted Databane when she got excited. That sounds like me, he sighed, this is a lot to take in. Don't worry, everything will be made clear when we arrive, she assured when a loud whistling sound turned their attention to fiery red head in the other bed. When we arrive where? Teia asked, where this fuck you taking us to? We're going to Kiba no Kuni, Teia-sama, Arisa answered. I see why you call him that, she pointed at Naruto, but why the hell are you calling me that? Why the fuck are you helping me? Teia-sama, do you recall what I said to you about sound jutsu? She nodded, during the Sengoku period all the way up to the Second Great War, there was only one clan to have knowledge of sound-based jutsu, they were called the Asajiri. They were masters of Genjutsu and possessed the Kaishin Kitsuzui, resonating bone, Kekai Genkai, which you have. Teia stared blankly at her. I call bullshit, she said, if I had a Kekai Genkai, Orochimaru would have made me one of his sick-ass experiments. Perhaps he was more occupied with more obvious Kekai Genkai, Teia thought about the old woman's claim, and instantly several people popped into her mind. The horny fag brothers, the inbred spider, the human boner, that censor Skizho, and that Uchiha fuckboy were the first in a long list. I can believe that, she deadpanned, but what does that have to do with you? When Yuzu was being attacked, we asked for aid from Konoha and several unaffiliated clans, she explained. Konoha was spread thin with its operations against AIM, K's, and Iwa, while most of the clans ignored our request. If it wasn't for Lady Rebecca of the Asajiri clan, we would not have lasted as long as we did. Who's this Rebecca chick? She asked. Chigusa asked Arisa to retrieve the books from her quarters. Lady Rebecca was the head of the Asajiri and lead a small force of ninja to aid Yuzu, she said, at the time she was one of the most feared women in the elemental nations. Arisa arrived with a small stack of books. She took a few books and ran her hand over them. This is a bingo from the just before the Second Great War, she handed it to Teia and gave Arisa the other, Naruto-sama, this book is from the Third Great War. She gave the book to Arisa to show Naruto. I think you both will be pleasantly surprised at what you find on the marked pages, she clued them in. Teia flipped to the marked page and saw a picture of a woman with dark auburn hair and light blue and black robes, holding up her middle finger with her tongue sticking out. Asajiri no Rebecca, alias. 2-hand, female, age. 25, height. 5.7 feet, rank. S, bounty. 100 million alive, 50 million dead. Notable, current head of the Asajiri clan and possessed the Kaishin Kitsuzui bloodline. Genjutsu, Taijutsu specialist. Kuretsu on Ken, cracking sound fist, master, under no circumstance are you to engage a close range, known to cause opponents to spontaneously combust. Nature affinity, fire, earth, presumed, affiliates, Akajima Rakiru Akatasugar, twilight, weapons, Senbin with bells, demonic flute, known jutsu, Utapu, Atakakan, Utapu, Odakasho, Mateki, Gengisu Kyoku, Mateki, Mujinansa, Kuchius, Doki, Kushius, Bat, Meijin, Jigoku Kauka no Jutsu, Meijin, Gensu Kane, Utapu, Kuryu, Utapu, Nyonpa, Kaiten, Karyu Enden, Kaiten, Hasenka no Jutsu, Kaiten, Gyuka no Jutsu, Doten, Iwagakure no Jutsu, Doten, Maguragakure no Jutsu. This was one bad bitch, Teia was thoroughly impressed, spontaneously combust. One of the abilities of that particular clan was, Utapu, singing arts, they could resonate their bones to the destruction frequency of their target. She balled up her fist and opened it, and boom. That is the most kick-ass thing I've ever heard, she exclaimed before rereading the page, but this time something jumped out her. Hold the fuck up. Everyone, except Naruto, turned to her. I knew a few assholes back in Odo that used Senbin with bells and the Gensu Kane Jutsu, illusionary bells. Did they have a flute like yours? Chigusa asked. They were given to all Asajiri newborns. Fuck no, she answered, I was the only one. That Jinjutsu was a favorite amongst the Asajiri, like the Uchiha and the Gakakyu no Jutsu, Great Fireball Jutsu. They wouldn't have taught it anyone, she pondered. That could mean that Orochimaru might have gotten his hand on the clan's forbidden scroll from someone. Or he killed everyone and just walked away with it. Teia spoke from intimate knowledge of how he worked. He'd probably kept me around, so he could dissect me later. I will make arrangements to locate the Asajiri clan scrolls, Chigusa promised. Arisa turned back and looked at Naruto, who hadn't said a word the entire conversation. She saw he was staring at something with the softest expression she had ever seen on his face. She followed his line of sight to the book she accidentally dropped and nestled itself in a propped-up possession between the bed and table, giving him a clear view of the contents. There was a picture of a woman, a red-haired woman with brown eyes and soft features. It looked as she was running on water about to do a jutsu with her index and middle finger on both hands crossed. Next to her picture was a name in big bold letters, Uzumaki Kushina. Uzumaki Kushina, alias. Red Hot Habanero, female, age. 24, height. 5.4 feet, rank. A. Bounty. 30 million alive or dead. Notable, survivor of the Uzumaki clan of Uzushiogakure, possesses immense chakra reserves and stamina. Able to create chains out of her chakra to restrain and or eliminate targets. Skilled in Fuinjutsu and proficient in trapping and infiltration. Approach with extreme caution. Nature affinity, water, fire, affiliates, Uzumaki Yajima, Namikaze Minato, Aburam Mishibi, Akamichi Chauza, Ureya, weapons, ninja wire, Tanto, portable water scroll, known jutsu, Page Bunshin no Jutsu, Suiton. Mizu Bunshin, Suiton. Hahanryu, Suiton. Suryuiden, Suiton. Tepidama, Suiton. Uzushiogakure no Jutsu, Suiton. Sujinheki, Bunshin Daibakuha, Kaiten. Hasenka no Jutsu, Kaiten. Gyuka no Jutsu, Kaiten. Zukaku, Kaiten. Ryuka no Jutsu. That's my mom, he teared up as he continued staring at her page. She's pretty. Do you need a moment, Naruto-sama, she asked. No, I feel fine, he compassed himself. Where are we going again? We're going to Kiba no Kuni to meet with someone who can help both of you, she answered. Yes, his assistance will greatly benefit both of you. Master Katakura is also an old friend of your grandfather, Naruto-sama, Chigusa added. A message has already been sent to him, he should be preparing for our arrival. The old woman took a whiff of the air and rose from her chair. Breakfast is about finished, we'll bring you both something to eat and continue our talks. She bowed slightly and walked off. Arisa grabbed the pill bottles and bowed to them as well, before leaving. Naruto and Teia both let out heavy sighs and glanced at each other. How you feel about all this? He asked. Like someone ran up in my house, stole all my shit, slipped me a roofie, re-aimed me and left me with my ass waving in the air, you? She stated. I don't feel damn thing, he said smirking. He felt content for the first time in a long time. You probably didn't feel anything looking at the pedo's ass either, Stubby, she stated. I thought you were gonna start using my name, he remarked. Why are you calling me Stubby anyhow? The pills Lil Miss Pedo Bear gave you make sure your pecker won't work till she says so. She saw the shocked look on his face and gave him the most evil grin he'd ever seen. May as well eat your man card and start drawing pretty pink flowers, unicorns, and lollipops on those bandages, Stubby. He asked her a dozen questions, but instead of answering she turned her back to him, covered herself in the blanket. Payback's a bitch, she thought, with one person in mind. Konoha Strict Correctional Facility, Anbu Ward. Nikki, what smells so good? A voice asked. Two large figures stood peering outside Mizuki's cell. Oh Fujin, Raijin, come on in, he waved, I got some treats for ya. Fujin grabbed hold of the bars and bent them into entrance to the cell. Mizuki walked over the corner of his cell, at the end of his cot, and slid open a rock panel. He reached inside and pulled out a large box, then slid it across the floor to the bulbous brother's feet. "Go ahead guys, dig in," he offered as he ate a dumpling. Without question the brothers tore open the box and began scarfing down the dumplings. They ate the majority of the dumplings without a word until Mizuki spoke. "Tell me, is it to your liking?" They continued eating. "I'll take that as a yes. There's plenty more you know." They stopped eating and turned their attention to Mizuki. "I should have known that delicious smell was coming from your cell, Aniki," Fujin said. Yeah, you allows figure out how to get the tastiest food for us," Aniki, Raijin agreed. "Well, it took a lot of sneaking around, but it was definitely worth it," Mizuki spoke. "I would feel absolutely terrible if my brothers had to go hungry." "You're the best," they both declared as they bowed before him. "We're lizards." They laughed. Mizuki chuckled along with them. "You're too funny," he stood up, "but even so, you must still be hungry. What would you say if I could get you even more delicious food?" Food, where?" They looked around the cell for more treats. "I know a place where there is far more delicious treats," Mizuki coaxed them. "Where's that, Aniki?" Raijin asked. Mizuki looked down at them with a fake surprised expression. "Oh, do you guys want to come with me?" he asked, to which the brothers nodded vigorously. "Let's go then, but there is one thing we have to do first." "What's that, Aniki?" Raijin's stomach growled. "I'm hungry." "Someone else wants to come with us," he smiled. Barrett's corner, Raijin. Mygo 98, demonic illusion crying lost child. Rank B. Classification Jinjutsu. Class Supplementary. Range Short medium. Parent Jutsu Demonic illusion hell viewing technique. A double-layered Jinjutsu designed to play on the subconscious traumas of the targets. When the first layer is breached, the target is trapped in a prison of their own making. When introduced to unfamiliar stimuli, the enemy ninja, the target regresses to a childlike state of mind while retaining memories of adulthood, making them easier to manipulate and interrogate. Shishu Fuin Ryu Yomi no Shiryaku, 4-symbol seal style invading darkness. Rank A. Classification Fuinjutsu, Kinjutsu. Class Supplementary. Range Short. A sealing technique used to implant memories and/or suggestions into the subject's subconscious. Varying from the amount of chakra the user uses when activating the seal, can determines the time frame the seal affects as well as long-term effects, which can include orders from eliminating the subject's own family to falsifying mission reports. When used effectively, with high enough levels of chakra, this jutsu can create sleeper agents and spies who are unaware they are spies for as long as 10 years. No evidence of this jutsu use has been seen outside the Uzumaki clan and is presumed lost. Shikakureta Hashira, 4 concealed plars. Rank C. Classification Ninjutsu, Kekai Ninjutsu. Range Short medium. A 4-person collaboration barrier jutsu used to soundproof and conceal chakra signatures in a small area from sensor-type shinobi. Meijin Gensu Kane, demonic illusion illusionary bells, Kin's jutsu from the Chunin exam. Chapter 3 waiting a few years. 2 years later, Katakura compound, Kiba no Kuni. The tall blonde teenage boy gripped the sheath of his katana in his left hand, stood blindfolded in the large training area, surrounded by wooden human-shaped training dummies with mechanisms attached to their backs. Off to the sidelines in the shade of several trees, a large group of men in blue and gray armor sat in anticipation of what was to come. Above the spectators, lounging comfortably in the tree, sat a young red-haired woman with an ever-present scowl-marring face. "Hey Teia, aren't you gonna cheer your boyfriend on?" called one of the men while wiggling his pinky. "Cram it, fuckstick," she yelled as something in the sky caught her attention. The man laughed at her. "That's enough," came a calm demanding voice. The men instantly stopped their laughing under the voice's owner. He was a tall gray-haired old man wearing a brown trench coat with the sleeves rolled up. Under it he wore gray chest armor and white slacks with gray shin guards. He fixed his gaze on his 2 charges, the young woman lounging in tree and the young man standing in the training field. Under his watch they both matured into a rather unique pair of teenagers. Teia would still outcurse anyone that annoyed her in the slightest with her ever-increasing vocabulary, but regardless she still matured into a beautiful young woman. She now stood at a nice 55 at just over 99 pounds, giving her a slightly thick build when coupled with her C-cup chest. Altogether the tomboy had a shape most of the female servants desired. She let her hair grow down just past her butt, resembling the length she had when she transformed, and after some goading from Naruto, she decided to forego wearing a head wrapping. She now wore a black sleeveless zip-up robe with slits going down the back of her legs that fanned out when she ran, jumped and fought, but gave the illusion she was a civilian when idle or just walking. It was decorated with blood-red trim lining them and her collar. Under that she wore a pair of black shorts, thigh-high shinobi boots with red shin guards, and a pair grappling gloves. Hadakura focused the bulk of her training on improving her genjutsu talents, physical conditioning, and whatever time was left over was put to use trying to figure out how to use her Kekai Genkai, but she could only go so far without actually knowing its fundamentals. So far the only thing she could do was turn her voice into a type of supersonic cannon that had a similar effect of one of Orochimaru's lab rats named of Zaku Abumi, only to much greater effect. She began calling that attack Daihakai Ka, Great Destructive Song. She figured that Scaly Sodomizer tried to use ninja tools and human experimentation to recreate her Kekai Genkai at some point, which pissed her off to no end. She as of yet hadn't figured out how to shatter objects without fear of blowing her own head off. Just as she grew and matured, so too did the young man. Thanks again to the tortures of Kadakura's training regiment, the once 48 shrimp grew to 57 with a lean muscular build. After Teia used that colorful vocabulary of hers to describe his look when they first met and Kadakura explaining the importance of being inconspicuous, he changed almost every facet what he considered his style. From the start he never really cared what his hair looked like, he left that to the local barbers and stylists. He knew he had to get rid of his trademark blonde hair for the time being, so he told them to dye it black, and after that he couldn't care less. They affectionately gave him a cut they called the 15 Special 1. Now his garb consisted of dark blue jacket with grey trim along the zipper and collar, a grey sash, black hakama, and shinobi shoes. To keep his identity secret he used makeup to cover up his birthmarks, and when needed, he would zip his jacket, which was normally fastened to the base of his throat, all the way up cover to lower half of his face, like his old friend Shino would. To complete his new look and to replace the bandages where his right eye was once nestled, he wore a black eye patch, a gift from his red-haired friend. He was trained relentlessly in the use of kenjutsu, physical conditioning similar to Teia, and afterwards devoted most of his down to sparring with soldiers from the barracks. One day during one such sparring match, Teia tried to place both Naruto and his sparring partner in a genjutsu, designed to make them think their clothes were on fire, and the nearest water source was the female-only bathhouse. Things didn't turn out so well for his sparring partner, but they figured out Naruto's condition made most types of genjutsu useless against him. Naruto figured, because his network was in shambles, the chakra could go where it was needed for the genjutsu to work. Naruto studied the ancient scrolls kept by the Katakura clan and understood the fundamental differences in the energy he could create, known as Basara and chakra. Unlike chakra, no specialized organs or networks were needed for it to flow, instead it engulfed the user and flowed according to their fighting instincts and willpower. With that in mind he trained diligently and became quite proficient in the ways of the sword. Currently, his favorite attack was one that combined his hard-earned speed, strength, and focus. Level 3, begin, Katakura ordered. At the old general's command the training dummies began cycling around the boy while the mechanisms attached to them started shooting kunai, shuriken, and senbon. The boy grabbed the hilt of his katana and lowered his stance, slowly spreading his legs apart. Then in one swift motion drew his blade with his right hand, fully extending his arm, before quickly sheathing it. The volley of projectiles flew towards their target when flashes of blue sparks appeared and the sounds clashing metal was heard as the volley of projectiles fell to the ground. "Tsunkiru, 1,000 cuts," Naruto said. Katakura smirked at the boy's performance. "Level 5, continuous barrage," he called. On his command 3 new lines of training dummies appeared behind the first encirclement, all with launchers and seal tags attached to their heads and forearms. Each line began cycling around the boy in alternating directions at varying speeds. "Begin," he ordered. The dummies started circling him faster and began firing kunai, shuriken, senbon, capture nets, and hammers with chains. The boy swiftly drew his sword once more and with blinding speed and grace began deflected the projectiles. As the projectiles continued firing faster and faster, the boy seemed to steadily increase his speed and precision. The tags on the dummies began glowing, each randomly cycling through 5 colors, red, green, blue, brown, and yellow, and began firing large fireballs, pressurized jets of water, compressed bullets of wind, violent streams of lightning, and giant arching boulders of earth and stone. The boy sensed the elemental attacks nearing him and shifted his foot back to properly intercept them when the earth below him started to shake and a jagged spike burst from the ground. The boy dodged a spike and spun around it to use as a shield against the water jets and boulders. He continued to deflect the projectiles, each step he took followed by another spike bursting out of the ground. He dodged, parried, and deflected everything launched at while maneuvering around the spikes shooting out of the ground. As he moved around the encirclement, he noticed the spikes began serving another purpose, limiting his range of motion. To counter the spikes the boy compressed his actions, each move he made became sharper. Instead of resembling sword routine it began to look more and more like a dance. He was concentrating so much on his training he failed to hear the spectators cheering him on from the sidelines. The kid's gotten good, he's almost as good as me. Says you, didn't the kid almost take your head off last week? He got lucky, his footwork pretty damn good. Hard to believe he couldn't tell his left foot from right when he got here. What's it been, 2 years now? 2 years? He's only been here 2 years and he can fight like that. Guy must be a prodigy or something. Oh yeah, forget you were new here. The kid's defiantly got talent. When he first showed up he was injured head to toe and covered in bandages. Hey Ed, when the kid finishes up, the guard looked up, but Teia was gone. Where did she go? The guard looked around the field for her and noticed an elderly woman walking past them towards the training area. Wait, the young guard called, ma'am, this area is off limits to the public. He tried to intercept the elderly woman, but was stopped by the older guards. I apologize, Lady Chigusa, he's new, the large guard apologized. Think nothing of it, she brushed it off with a smile and approached Katakura. I wasn't expecting you for another month, he said, not taking his eyes off the boy. Is that any way to greet an old friend? She answered, our tour was cut short. A prince contracted us to perform in his country. I assume Marissa is overseeing the troupe, are you sure she's prepared for that? He asked. She is more than ready, she raised an eye at his remark before turning her attention towards the training field. The young master's training has yielded superb results. You've done well, Katakura. I've given the boy my utmost attention, but even so, she glanced to him, his progress is impressive. There's nothing wrong with having drive, she countered. That's not what I'm talking about, his gaze hardened on the boy, I sense something ominous growing in him. Teia companionship seems to slow its progress, and I doubt the boy even noticed it himself, but still it's there. Chigusa focused her senses on the boy, and just as Katakura explained, the boy gave off an ominous foreboding feeling as he swung his sword. I see, she frowned, how long do you suppose it's been there? I first noticed it around the time he began his second level training, but I suspect it reared its head around the time he was judged, he deduced. The dragon's judgment, she thought back. 2 years ago, the large fortress gates opened to the spiraling emotion entertainment troupe. Lady Chigusa and Arisa lead the way inside, past the saluting guards. Just past the threshold waiting to greet them stood Lord Kajuro Katakura, samurai general of Kiba no Kuni. It's been a while, Chigusa, he bowed his head. 7 years, you look well, she smiled, you remember my granddaughter Arisa. Arisa? He looked behind her at the woman bowing with an amused smirk. Hello Master Katakura, she greeted. Arisa, little Arisa-chan. He stifled his laughter as he appraised the young woman before him, somehow you grew into proper young woman. She tried to keep the smile on her face, but her twitchy brow gave away her displeasure towards his comment. It's nice to see you too, she said. They continued talking as the guards escorted the troop inside. After they were safely inside, the walls and gates closed and Katakura finally felt it was safe enough to ask his question. Is what your message stated true? She nodded. Has his condition improved? He has improved and he can walk his own, but I've noticed his other symptoms starting to emerge. The boy hides them well, but not enough for me not to notice. So the plan I was originally thinking of is likely to slow, he figured, take me to him. They did as he asked and took him to meet with the boy they hoped to stake their futures on. In Naruto and Teia's quarters. Naruto and Teia just finished taking their medicine, both sat up in their beds to begin eating the paella dish on the small table before them. This is pretty good, Naruto stated as he scooped another spoonful onto his plate. That was on my side, asshole, Teia claimed. I'm still injured, gotta keep my strength up, he smiled taking spoonful off her plate and sticking it in his mouth. I know you didn't do what I think you did, she glared. And what are you gonna do if I did? They stared each other down. Outside, Chigusa, Arisa, and Katakura approached their guest's quarters. You fappy little bastard. Bring it on, Carrot Top, they heard, followed by the sound wood breaking and shattering glass. Is this normal? Katakura asked. It has as of late, sorry, Arisa apologized, but Katakura just smiled at her. Not at all, reminds me of the old days, he brushed off as they entered. Inside they saw the Reed grasping a broken chair by one of its legs over her head, poised to strike the blonde boy holding one of Chigusa's walking sticks reverse grip. A strange sight considering the girl was laying down in her bed and the boy had a bent spoon in his mouth. Naruto-sama, Teia-sama, you have a visitor, they turned their attention to the entrance. This is Lord Kajuro Katakura, he will be overseeing your training from now on. And we don't have time to waste, he got their attention, because of your condition we can't afford to treat you with kid gloves. Originally I planned to teach you basic kinjutsu styles and history, but because of your situation, I decided to go for the sink or swim approach. Your first lesson begins now, follow me. Unbeknownst to Katakura, his words struck a chord with the injured boy, something told him he preferred this method. Naruto got out of bed, using the walking stick to keep his balance, and followed after Katakura. After the two were gone, the silence was broken as Teia put the broken chair down. Sucks to be him, Teia said, grabbing the plate. Katakura led Naruto through his compound to his private dojo in the back next to a large shrine with ornate statues of ancient gods of war. He knelt down in front of it and placed his hands together like he was praying. "What I'm about to show you was interested to my family by yours centuries ago," he began muttering something Naruto couldn't make out. The two statues responded to Katakura's chant and slowly began to move. They turned to face away from each other and knelt down on one knee towards Katakura and Naruto. Their heads moved up as if they were staring at Naruto, before each of their right eyes glowed blue and a passageway opened behind them. Katakura stood back up and motioned for the awestruck Naruto to follow. They walked carefully to a long, dimly lit staircase leading down into the earth. "This is just like that Princess Gale movie," Naruto muttered. "This is no joke, you're about to enter a sacred place only those of your heritage are allowed to experience," he said. "Since you're here, doesn't that mean you'll be a part of it too?" he asked. "This is a rite of passage as used by your ancestors to unlock the full power of the Dakiganryu. What is my bloodline anyway, a Dijutsu like the Sharingan?" Kajuro glanced back at the boy. "Didn't Chigusa fill you in?" Naruto shook his head. "She told me about my family and the Uzumaki clan," Katakura seemed to understand. "I see. Tell me, have you ever heard of the Rikido Sennin?" Naruto shook his head again. He was the first to explain the true nature of chakra, more than 1,000 years. He spread the ideals and religion of ninju around the world. Those teachings later has became the foundation for all ninjutsu. The Dakiganryu, however, doesn't follow such teachings. Chakra is created when you combine the spiritual and physical energies in your body. The Dakiganryu allows you to combine mental energy with spiritual energy and physical energy with your own life energy to create an energy called Basara. "What can I do with something like that?" Naruto asked. "That's something you'll have to ask yourself." He saw the confused look on Naruto's face, "but I can tell you that each of your ancestors that possessed that ability changed the world." "What do you mean?" Katakura thought for a moment before answering. "The progenitor of your bloodline was said to have conquered the entirety of the elemental nations, before they known as such, from the swamps of Numa no Kuni to the snowy plains of Yuki no Kuni." Naruto looked at him disbelievingly. "You made that up?" "No matter how powerful someone is, nobody could have done that, or so he believed. If that was true, why isn't it in any history books?" "The same reason the Rikido Sennin isn't in any history book," the general stated. "Their exploits are far too fantastic for people to believe." "Okay, if all this is true, how do you know about all this?" Katakura stopped dead in his tracks and faced Naruto. "My clan along with one other vowed a blood oath to your ancestors to serve and protect their heirs for as long as we exist. And we have honored our pledge time and time again. When Uzushio was destroyed and again when Kushina-sama died, we believed we had failed our duty. However, when Chigusa found you and word of your presence and condition spread amongst the clans, we have been preparing diligently for your arrival." They continued walking in silence. After Katakura's declaration, Naruto wondered just what his ancestors could have done to inspire that much devotion in them. He wanted to know but he couldn't find the words to ask. They continued down the stairs until they finally came to an archway. Naruto's eyes had yet to adjust from the dim lighting and was temporarily blinded by the brightness. His eyes slowly adjusted and was shocked by what he saw. A beautiful crystal blue lake surrounded by 6 gigantic statues sculpted out of pure white marble. The rippling blue and white light from the lake bathed the entire cavern with its light. It was the most mesmerizing thing Naruto had ever seen. His attention was drawn from the lake to the statues that surrounded it, each one meticulously detailed to the point they seemed to be breathing. Like Naruto, Katakura took in his surrounding. The last time he entered this cavern with more than 50 years ago with the boy's grandfather. "This is the Dragon's Well," he said. Naruto snapped back to reality. "What is this place?" he wondered. "This is what was entrusted to my clan," Kajuro answered as he ran his hand along one of the statues. "Each statue is a depiction of one of your ancestors. If they're my ancestors, shouldn't there be more?" "Quite astute. More specifically, they were the only ones to unlock the Dakiganryu," he enlightened. "Each one of them changed the world in some way or another." "What do you mean some way or another?" Katakura looked at him before pointing to the statue of woman with long hair tied with a ribbon dressed in a hakama in her right hand. She gripped a katana reverse grip. "She ruled and protected the empire the progenitor of your bloodline created. When it was threatened by an invasion from another continent, she with sword in hand annihilated them." He then pointed to another statue. This one of a wild-looking man with spiky hair and a tattered-looking, loose-fit hakama, showing off his chest. Over that he wore a haori with the sleeves torn off. Over his right shoulder, he held a long katana with a serrated edge. "Well, that man destroyed the empire." That surprised Naruto. "If he hadn't done it, we likely wouldn't have the elemental nations." "Why would he do that? Shouldn't he have helped protect it like she did?" "I have my suspicions, but it isn't my place to speak for him," he said, wanting to get back to task at head. "The reason I brought you here is to have you confer with your ancestors. This will be the first step in your training. Originally, I had hoped to give some basic instruction before entering this place, but by doing this first it'll help jumpstart your process should you pass. Take that path to the center of the lake and meditate." "That's it?" The graying man nodded. Naruto turned and eyed the stone steps worriedly before continuing on. He walked carefully on the steps so not to lose his balance. When he reached the center he sat down as instructed and crossed his legs. He closed his eye and began to focus on his chakra, placing his hands in the ram sign. Almost immediately, a sharp stabbing pain coursed through his body and he remembered his condition. Instead of weaving his hands into another sign, he simply placed them in his lap and closed his eye again. An hour passed with nothing seemingly happening. Naruto was starting to feel tired and let a yawn slip and blinked a few times. He turned to talk to his guide, but instead of seeing him at the lake's edge, he saw a vast darkness. What the crap? He jumped up. So you noticed, took you a while, said a voice. Who said that? Naruto asked. Is everyone here? Naruto turned around to face the unknown voice. The void closed in around him, stopping just short of slab he stood on. Alright, let's get started. Naruto faced forward and saw a figure shrouded in light. At its call the figure was joined by 5 others. This will only hurt for a second, said another voice. As its words started to set in he grabbed his head and shouted in pain. He felt like someone had jammed his head in a vice. He tried to endure the pain, but suddenly it intensified and he dropped to his knees, blacking out. Still green, he's got much to learn. He is still tainted by darkness. Will that be a problem? He has a strong will. It shouldn't pose much of a threat. Who cares, as long as he can fight. His potential's far greater than the others. I wonder what he'll be like if he reaches it. He'd better be something. I haven't had a good fight in over 2,000 years. Shall we see what he can do? They seemed to come to a consensus and vanished one by one until only one remained and approached Naruto. How long you gonna stay like that? Naruto stirred and sat up slowly. Ah, what the hell? He rubbed his head. Looks like a son of a bitch, huh? Naruto just stared at the figure, not sure what to make of it. What's with that look? You should be happy you passed a test. And on your first try no less. That put Naruto on guard. He suspected whatever this thing was it knew a lot about him. Relax kid, from this point we'll see if you have what it takes to succeed us, he explained. What test? Who or why? Something clicked in Naruto's mind and remembered what the old man said. Are you? So you finally figured it out, the voice said. We'll save the intros for the trials. It turned and vanished from his sight. Meanwhile, Sakura sat watching the boy meditate with great anticipation. Over the past hour, he watched as the boy's presence on the lake slowly diminished to the point he could have been mistaken for another statue. As he observed him, he took notice of a strange haze starting to surround Naruto as if he was on fire. The air started to feel heavy and he found it difficult to breathe normally. Unsure what this might mean, he focused all his senses on Naruto and saw he was shrouded in a thin blue layer of flame-like energy. He was about to act but saw the flames weren't affecting him. On the contrary, they seemed to ebb and flow with his breathing. The aura slowly grew stronger as time went by until it stabilized several inches from his body. He was very pleased with the seeming success but stifled his thoughts so not to jinx the boy's progress. He saw the boy begin to stir and expected him to awaken from his trance, but instead of the aura receding like he expected it ignited engulfing Naruto and blinded him temporarily. When his vision returned he saw the boy collapsed over. Kujiro rushed to his side, fearing the worst may have come to pass. He checked the boy's pulse and let out a relieved breath. The boy was just asleep. He grabbed the walking stick and lifted the boy onto his back before carrying the young successor out of the well. Present day. I see you believe this may have something to do with his trials, she wondered. No matter how much I try to guide him or offer him counsel, that darkness hasn't waned, he explained, so I'm obligated to believe either he or his bloodlines fostering it. Regardless whether he overcomes it or not, it's out of our hands, she surmised. Instead of dwelling on this any longer, can you tell me how the young master's studies are going? They turned their attention back to Naruto. I believe his performance speaks for itself, he deadpanned. Indeed, but I'm referring more to his academics, she clarified. Ah yes. His studies have progressed nicely in all the subjects I've presented to him. He has a firm grasp of various combat strategy and tactics. I've also sent him on negotiation assignments with some of my contacts from the Merchant Association. The one who really impressed me in this regard is Teia. She was intrigued, despite her choice of language, she has a keen mind for tactics and strategy. Usually I have the two spar with each other, they work well together. Naruto forces her to think more outside the box, and Teia forces him to think before acting. When you said she was helped slow his darkness, is that what you meant? She wondered. Somewhat he thought how he should word this, she seems to have feelings for the boy, but whether or not they friendly or romantic remains to be seen. She is quite stubborn. I see, she stifled a laugh, how is she progressing? Remarkable doesn't do her credit, but I believe that stems from her competitive nature, he stated. In the beginning, I thought she was Yunjutsu type, but she is more inclined towards Taijutsu. I'm not sure where I'd place her skill level though. How is the search for the Asajiri clan scrolls? Not as well as I'd hoped, she regretted. It seems Orochimaru has more pursuers than we originally thought. Misinformation is rampant wherever he's concerned. He let out a tired sigh. It seems there's bad news on every front, he claimed. I was recently received a message from the Mizoku. They've been analyzing the treatment process you proposed for the boy and found it was far too life-threatening. Have they found an alternative? They're using all their resources to find a solution. From the message it sounds like they're searching for someone in particular. Not many come to mind, with the ability to restore a Jinchuriki's chakra network. She wondered, are they trying to get the Slug Princess? No, they don't want to use anyone with ties to her or any hidden village for that matter, he clarified. Did they mention who? Discretion is their highest concern. They don't want to heal him, just for him to be targeted immediately afterwards. Their conversation was ended abruptly by the chorus of cheers erupting behind them. The training area now covered in rubble and debris from the earth spikes and training dummies, and at the epicenter stood Naruto. He took a deep calm breath and sheathed his blade before removing his blindfold. He smiled and waved as he approached the old woman he hadn't seen in so long. "In a while, Granny," he smiled. "It has, young master," she smiled. "How have you been?" "Been better," he said, stretching his shoulders. "Oh yeah, thanks for the painkillers." He patted his right shoulder. "I'm glad they were of use to you," she said, "but your thanks should go to Arisa. She's the one who created those seals." "Is she here?" "I haven't seen her in a while." "I'm afraid not." "She leading the troop now? You finally retiring?" "I have been considering it, but not quite yet." "Let me see your sword," Katakura interjected, to which Naruto complied. He unsheathed the blade, glanced at it, then to Naruto with an annoyed look. "How many times do I have to tell you to conserve your basara, use only the necessary amount?" he asked rhetorically. "Look at this blade. It's chipped, bent, and singed. It was brand new this morning, now it looks older than Methuselah." Naruto scoffed, looking away. "It's not like I can help it," he said. "I was holding back as much as I could. At least it's not rusted." Katakura re-sheathed the blade and whacked him on the head with the hilt for his insolence. "Damn it," Naruto shouted. "What was that for? Go take a break." "It's almost lunch," Katakura ordered as he and Chigusa walked away. "Can you accompany me to the den, Chigusa? We can continue catching up later, young master." "Yeah, see ya," he waved. The guards took this time to approach Naruto while he was crouched down nursing the lump on his head. "Nice workout, kid. Wanna join me and the guys in the mess hall? I heard they're serving pork conf." The large guard was cut off by something landing on the back of his head, smashing him face first into the ground. When the dust cleared, they were greeted by everyone's favorite foul-mouthed Redeed, perched on the back of the unconscious guard's head, with a large menacing grin on her face. "You're coming with me," sounding more like a threat than a request. She grabbed Naruto by the back of his collar and dragged him away with a dumbfounded look on his face. "Poor bastard," the guards all agreed. "A little help please," the downed guard pleaded. "I think she broke something." The Basho, the second largest city in Kiba no Kuni. Naruto and Teia walked through the hassle and bustle of streets in silence. He knew something was bothering her, but instead of talking about it openly, he decided to wait until they reached their destination. He didn't have to wait too long when she stopped in front of their usually stop, Okonomiyaki Akins. They walked in and took their usually spots at a booth at the back wall. "Well, if it isn't my favorite customers," they were greeted by a smiling dark brown-haired young woman with blue eyes and a plump stomach. "I haven't seen you two in a while. Where's Hisao?" Teia scowled at the mention of his name. "He took off a while ago. Said he found what he was looked for," Naruto answered. "Well, good for him," she smiled. "So what are you two gonna have?" "I'll have my usual," Teia said. "Some here," Naruto ordered. "Okay, that's 4 okonomiyaki, an order of dango, yakitori, tonkatsudan, 2 yakisoba and 2 sides of tempura," she recited from memory. "Did I get it right?" Naruto confirmed. "Speaking of something right," Teia chimed in, "one too many Twinkies are knocked up." "Yeah, that idiot husband of mine finally did something right," she blushed brightly as she answered the redeed. "Didn't think he had it in him," Teia thought aloud. "I remember it like it was yesterday, a wonderful night." Naruto didn't like where this going, a romantic night of dinner and dancing, with just the right amount of alcohol, and then she seemed to glow even brighter, and her unwilling audience know what that meant. "Okay, we'd love hear the rest, but we don't want to keep you. It looks the lunch crowd's starting to come in." Naruto hurried her away and sighed. "So what's up with you dragging me out here?" he asked. "I was hungry and you were there, along with 6 guards," he remarked. "You should apologize to Bora by the way. You probably broke something with that entrance of yours. Smartest, learn from the best," he smiled. "Damn it," she gave up. "I've been thinking about some shit." "Oh? Assuming we're both alive to see our next birthdays, what then?" Naruto vaguely understood. "You can't actually want to stay here the rest of your life." "Hell no," he answered. "I don't really have any plans beyond surviving my 17th, but staying here isn't an option." "Maybe settle down somewhere else," she said. "Konoha would probably love have you back." a non-explosive Jinchuriki would. "You know damn well I ain't going back there," he admitted with little bite. Over the time she had known Naruto, nothing set him off faster than the mention of his old home. After his banishment and the events that lead him to this point combined with his time he spent away from Hai no Kuni, effectively cut any personal affection he had for it. At first he hated them, but as the threat of an extremely violent death loomed closer each day and some therapy, that hate slowly morphed into something akin to complete apathy. He couldn't care less what happened to the leaf, with the exception of maybe 3 or 4 people, but that didn't mean he wanted to be reminded of it. Far too many bad memories for his taste. "What about you?" he continued. "What about me? After you get that scroll, what are you gonna do?" "I'm gonna murder that snakeskin son of a bitch in his cold blood," she admitted, "been saying that since the day we met." "Well maybe I'll come along," he chuckled, "just get me close enough to him and boom. Teia gets a new pair of shoes." His laughter was lost on her. "That's not funny," she deadpanned. "Come on, I'm just kidding," he claimed. "I'm not kidding, you stubby little son of a bitch," she snapped. He obviously misjudged the situation. Something serious must have been bothering her. He looked around and saw that every eye in the restaurant was on them. "Do you mind?" He got them turn away. "Okay, what's up?" "Never mind," she didn't face him. "Come on, you dragged me here to talk. Just tell me what's up." "I'm thinking about taking care of a promise I made to myself a while back." Naruto tried to remember if she said anything like that to him, and one promise instantly come to mind, but thought it's still too early to carry out that one. "Which promise is that?" He feigned ignorance, burn down the Wagarashi casino in Cha no Kuni, beat the shit out of Tamari with her own fan, dig up your old teammates' corpses, piss on them, and rebury them upside down. "I almost forgot about those," she thought, "might take care of those too. If it's about the one we were just talking about, you know I'm always up for a road trip." She was about to say something when the hostess returned with their large order. 4 okonomiyaki, dango, yakitori, tonkatsudan, 2 yakisoba, 2 sides of tempura and a strawberry parfait for the lady, she recited. "Wait, we didn't order a parfait," Naruto corrected as she placed their order down. "It's on the house. You shouldn't make your girlfriend angry, sugar." She walked away. "Ain't that a bitch?" Teia ignored the look on his face and began eating the dessert nice and slow to mock him. They both ate their meal in silence, only being interrupted by the occasional inappropriately loud belch. The meal seemed to temper her attitude because after they finished she got real tight-lipped. "So now that we're full and little sleepy, wanna tell me about this trip of yours?" Naruto picked his teeth. "I hear Tsuki no Kuni's nice this time of year." His comment had fallen on deaf ear since Teia had already left the booth and made a beeline for the exit. Naruto went to follow but stopped at the bar to pay the bill and dashed out the door. He scanned the streets for his temperamental friend when he saw a tuft of red hair turning around the corner and rushed after her. He caught up to her fairly quick, but her mood hadn't changed. If anything, she seemed more pissed off than usual. "Hey, I have an idea," he claimed. "That's new." "I heard that, I know. How about we head over to the arcade?" he offered. "Gratuitous violence and grown men crying aloud cheers you up." "I'll pass." She sped up her pace to the compound. Naruto continued to try and cheer her up with no success. Each of his attempts was met with either a half-hearted threat or snide remark. He couldn't figure out what was wrong. If he pissed her off, normally she'd take off and blow something up, but apparently that wasn't the case since she was still here. He thought maybe if he just stayed quiet and left her to whatever was on her mind she'd cheer up some, but that seemed to set her off more. When they finally returned to the compound, he was still no closer to figuring out his friend. He was about to try something else, but she had vanished when his thoughts sidetracked him. He spent the rest of the day searching for her in and around the compound to no avail. He figured she just didn't want to be found. He called off his search when he heard the dinner bell go off and went to the mess hall. When he arrived he thought he see her eating at one of the tables, but still no Teia. He had gotten there before the crowd started pouring in, so he grabbed a tray and loaded up. He saw that same group of guards from earlier sitting at a nearby table and took a set next to them. "Looks like we got another one of them pointed at him." "Huh," he answered. "Brad finally dumped ya." Naruto told them how he tried to cheer her up and her responses. They just laughed at him for trying to figure out what women were thinking and gave him a drink to try and cheer him up. An hour and several bottles of sake later, Naruto's blacked out form was being carried away to his room. Later that night, after the lights went out and only the faint spotlights from the night guards was present, a lone figure stalked the shadows of the Katakura compound, making its way to the drunken young master's room. The figure made it to his quarters with ease and silently slid the door shut behind them. He knelt down and put his knapsack on the floor before making their way to his bedside. The moonlight shining through the window revealed the figure's long unkempt red hair and identity. She stood over the drunk young man and looked at him with a flurry of emotions. She sat down softly next to him and gazed at his blissfully unaware face. She wanted to tell him about the message she received when he was training, the plans she formulated, and most of all she wanted him to go with her. Earlier as their lunch went on, it was pretty apparent he knows something was going on, but his suicidal joke made her rethink asking him at all. Sure, he said he would help her, but she wanted both of them to come out of it alive. She noticed each and every one of his sudden pain attacks over the years, no matter how he tried to hide them, and the time between each attack was steadily shortening. She knew Katakura was working with someone to save him, and his chances for survival were a hell of a lot higher here than going on what might very well be a suicide mission if her information wasn't accurate. She thought about all the time they spent together, him, her, and even that prick Hisao. She could honestly say those were the best years of her life. The images of those days flashed before her eyes in quick succession, and she knew her answer. She reached down to him, but instead of jerking him awake or pulling a prank on him like many had seen her do, she gently traced his cheek and let an uncharacteristically warm smile grace her face. She slowly leaned down, whispered something in his ear, before a heated blush appeared on her face. She slowly pulled away and hovered over him, her hand never leaving his cheek, her smile faded as her blush intensified. She quickly looked around the room before focusing back on him. She leaned back down and placed a single gentle kiss on his lips. She felt him moan and stir a bit as they kissed. She thought he might have been getting into it, albeit subconsciously, when something unexpected happened. The boy let out a loud, alcohol-ridden burp into her mouth. She shot away from him with a hardened scowl as she clenched her fist, but stopped herself before she could slug him. If she did, he would have woken up, and that would have put her in an awkward position. She saw him stir once more and took it as her cue to leave. The next morning, Naruto awoke the next morning with a massive headache, last night being his first time drinking, he wasn't prepared for the later effects. He lethargically opened his eyes and looked around his room, for a moment remembered how he spent his night. He took a deep breath and held his head, swearing not to drink again. After his eyes adjusted, he got a drink of water and readied himself for another day of training. As he proceeded to the blacksmith quarters for his new sword, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He had this same feeling when he woke up but dismissed it, thinking it was probably because of the alcohol. As he walked around the corner and the blacksmith huts came into view, he heard some of guards talking off to the side. Why would she just leave without telling anyone? Who knows? Her room was completely cleaned out, so she's probably not coming back. How's the young master handling it? The guard wondered, weren't those two a couple? Naruto caught onto the conversation they were having and dashed off in the opposite direction before they saw him. He ran straight to Teia's room and opened the door. He scanned her room and saw it was indeed cleaned out, all of her things were gone from her weapons down to the last sock. He rushed out of her room and immediately went to see Katakura. He found him lounging in his rock garden drinking tea with Chigusa. Master Naruto, how are you this morning? The old woman greeted. She's gone. You found out about that rather quick, Katakura stated. Did you send her on an errand? He asked. No, she left sometime in the night, Katakura claimed. She didn't leave us many clues to where she could be heading. Perhaps that's the idea, Chigusa interjected. Some of the servants had the impression you and she had a fight yesterday. I wouldn't call it a fight, he thought, more like dodging. She probably wanted to tell you something, but changed her mind. Naruto thought back to his conversation with her and felt like banging his head on the wall for being so blind. He turned to leave when Katakura spoke. You plan to go after her, he nodded, even though she doesn't. You too? The boy nodded again. How do you plan to find her? Katakura asked. She's a better tracker than you. Do you know where she's going? Does she have any contacts? Naruto thought she would head for Oto no Kuni, but he couldn't be sure of thought, and besides that guess, couldn't answer any of his teacher's questions. So you want me to wait till her trail completely vanishes or she turns up again? He knew that if Orochimaru catches her she won't ever be found, living or otherwise. Perhaps there's another option, Chigusa thought aloud, maybe you should meet with the Mizoku. Katakura stroked his stubbled chin and thought about the effects her idea. I think that may be our best option, he deduced. If Naruto goes to them with a request, they won't deny it if he proves himself. And their information gathering abilities are greater than our own. Would you be willing to sacrifice all your progress here to go after her? What do you mean? He didn't understand. The Mizoku are fiercely loyal to your lineage and they don't like weakness, Katakura explained. If you don't meet their standards, they may hold you indefinitely. Are prepared for that. Naruto didn't even need to think it over and turned to pack some things. What kind of question is that? He answered. It's obvious what my answer is. With those words he left their presence. You've certainly done a good job, the old woman smiled. Katakura let a small almost unnoticeable grin creep onto his face as they watched the boy leave. Somewhere on the K's no Kuni border, Teia stood in an office facing down someone she really wanted to kill, but couldn't afford to. It's been a long time, Teia of the North Gate, he smiled at her. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot you're no longer in Orochimaru's employ. Should I just call you Teia-chan? She really hated this guy. She looked around his office and noticed how just about nothing stood out, mahogany bookshelves filled with random books, a few potted plants here and there, black leather couches, a coffee table and a S-shaped desk where he sat with his computer. If she hadn't known any better she would think his business was legit. However, the one thing that stood out most was a peculiar-looking board game at the end of the desk next to the computer. "They're still playing that moronic game," she stared at the odd assortment of shogi, chess, and go pieces. "And why wouldn't I continue this grand game?" He looked out of the giant glass windows to the city below with a crooked smile. "Everything's just starting to get exciting." She got the feeling he wasn't talking his board game. "Where's the information I asked for?" She wanted to leave as soon as possible. Now, you know as well as I do that everything has a price, Teia-chan." He picked up a file out of his desk and waved it around. "How much?" "This one's on the house." He tossed it to her. "I have a feeling just you coming here is all the payment I'll need." Teia looked the information over. "Remember, this information is about our favorite fork-tongued friend. With him there's no telling how accurate this really is," he told her as she left. "I'll be sure to tell them you said hello." She flipped him off and slammed his door shut. The man laughed at her obvious reaction. "Human beings are so predictable," he laughed out. Barrett's Corner. Daihakai Ka, Great Destructive Song. Rank B. Classification Ninjutsu. Class Offensive. Range Short medium. Teia needs chakra in her vocal cords to magnify her voice into a pressurized supersonic blast capable of leveling the immediate area or decimating targets. Tsunkiru, 1000 cuts. Rank B. Classification Kinjutsu. Kekai Genkai. Class Offensive. Defensive. Range Short. Naruto focuses all his attention on his immediate area and anticipates the trajectory of any incoming projectiles, then with the aid of his Basara, draws his blade at superhuman speeds and intercepts them before they reach their targets. When done correctly, this move appears as a single horizontal slash. Chapter 4 Land of False Hope. Somewhere in Oto no Kuni, Kabuto Yakushi, right-hand man of the snake San Orochimaru, walked the dark halls of one of Otagaku's many hidden strongholds. Accompanying him were two men that had became rather infamous among Oto's forces. The man to Kabuto's right stood taller than the others at 510, with a grey open flak jacket and tattered black shorts, showing off his heavily muscled physique, shoulder-length white hair under a headband bearing a Otagaku's symbol. The other man was equal in stature to Kabuto with spiky light blue hair and blue eyes. He wore a black flak jacket designed after Kumagaku's old standards with a grey sash and pants. Both of them eagerly awaited what their master summoned them for. The last time the two met with him, he gave them their curse seals and assigned them to work under a kunoichi named Guren. They were beginning to think he had forgotten about them since they retrieved Sasuke when they received his summons. They continued to follow Kabuto through the winding corridors until they reached a pair of large doors. They slowly opened without aid into a poorly lit room. At the far end of the room, they could barely make out the silhouette of someone sitting in a chair resting their head upon their fist. The two instantly knew who it was occupying the dark throne and knelt before him. "You summoned us, Lord Orochimaru," they chimed. The pale Sanin grinned at them. "You both have far exceeded my expectations. Guren applauds your talents." They were surprised she would say anything in their favor, considering her. "In light of that, I believe congratulations are in order. You both will accompany Kabuto to one of my pits, where you will take command." They both looked surprised he would appoint them to such a position of authority. "You seem hesitant. Is something wrong?" he wondered. "Of course not, Lord Orochimaru," the bulky shinobi answered. "We are unworthy of such praise," affirmed the other man. "Excellent," he was pleased, "you may leave." "Sir," they answered, quickly leaving his presence. "Kabuto, I want you check on that man while you are there, see if he's in a more cooperative mood, then continue inducting the Fuma clan into our ranks," Orochimaru ordered. Kabuto bowed his head and left as well. Shortly after Kabuto's departure, Orochimaru rose from his seat and peered into the darkness behind his throne with a toothy grin. "Sasuke," he called out, "it's time we take our leave." "Where?" he asked from the shadows, not caring for what the answer was. "One of my associates claims to have created something that might prove quite useful," he informed his young protege. "We leave for Yumi no Kuni, the Shimontan Pass, northern Tsuchi no Kuni border." It had been well over a week since Naruto left Katakura's compound. Currently he was making his way through the most treacherous span of mountain roads in the entirety of the Tsuchi no Kuni. The Shimontan Pass claimed hundreds of travelers each year foolhardy enough to traverse it, a long winding unpaved road stretching the full length of Tsuchi no Kuni's northernmost border, carved out of an 85-degree unstable cliffside, frequented by mudslides in the spring, rock slides in summer and fall, avalanches in winter, and compounded by uncommonly strong winds year-round. Old man Katakura told him to head for the ocean via Bishamontan Pass, and he would meet an escort party from the Mizoku along the way. He had no idea why someone would want to meet in this death trap of all places. Since he first began his trek into the pass, he hadn't been able to sleep or even rest his weary eyes for that matter, and for good reason. Ironically, the last person he had any contact with was a hostess at a rest stop shortly before entering the pass, where the road just so happened to detour away from the pass, who preached of the dangers of Bishamontan. She even told him stories about people who were crushed to death while sleeping on the pass. He quickly brushed them off, claiming stories like that are always worse than the real thing. He honestly believed that until his first night on the pass. When the sun set over the snow-capped mountain ranges and fatigue was about to set in, he settled against the cliff face, resting his travel pack behind him for cushioning, carefully tucking his sword under his mantle with him. He had just began to close his eyes when he felt a sudden rumble snap him back to attention, just as a gigantic boulder came crashing down a few feet away from him. Since then, paranoia took hold and he hadn't been able to sleep a wink since. Better to be safe than crushed by a mountain of rubble, as the saying goes. Naruto greatly anticipated the moment he could finally be done with his relaxing trek through the mountains, but an uneasy thought crept into his sleep-deprived mind. What if the Mizoku didn't show up? The notion of wandering around on a wild goose chase severely pissed him off. All his time wasted here could have been better spent trying to find his friend. Judging from his surrounding, he guessed he would likely have his answer in another day or so. He may have been hallucinating and imagining what he wanted. The smell the salty sea air carried on the wind, the steady increase of local flora, meaning he had already began descent. It may be wishful thinking, but he believed his walkabout was nearly over. Luckily for him, it turned out he was being pessimistic. Before the sun began to set, he could see the ocean waves break on what he assumed was the coastline. He continued down the mountain road, this time in search of a nice comfortable boulder-free place to sleep. Quickening his pace, he ventured into a tunnel dug through the mountain that marked the end of Bishamontan Pass and his entry into the former nation of Sora no Kuni. Thankfully, the tunnel was lit fairly well and less than an hour later he was out. As he exited the tunnel, he gazed out on possibly the most beautiful sight he'd ever seen, the crystal blue sea to the east, seamlessly morphing into a lush forest of giant sequoia as he shifted his gaze west, surrounded by a picturesque wall of mountain ranges. The most noticeable feature he spotted was an odd, slightly curved rock formation jutting out of the earth before the horizon directly in front of him. As he tried to focus in on it, he slowly felt his need for sleep suddenly wane and his instincts compelled him to approach it. His feet complied with their request and began walking towards it. He wandered down the mountain road and into the dense forest, paying little heed to his surroundings. His attention firmly set on the stone formation, so much so he didn't notice his audience in the trees above him. "Hey big sis," called a young boy with a bow and a pair of quivers filled with arrows mounted on his back. "Who's that?" Spiky black hair, eye patch over his right eye, wearing a mantle with Katakura clan signet, sleepless appearance and a katana, analyzed the woman in the slightly loose-fitted kimono holding a katana that appears to be the young master. "This looks like an idiot," spoke another young boy with 3 pink stars tattooed under left eye. "He hasn't even noticed us yet." "What do you say we see what the young master's made of?" said a dark-skinned girl with small jewel on her forehead as she flashed through a series of hand signs. Meijin. Kyozo, demonic illusion mirror image. They waited the effects of her genjutsu to become visible and watched their guest flail about like the idiot they assumed him to be, but to their surprise, he continued on ignorant to what befell him. "What the hell just happened?" she wondered. "Nothing happened," answered a bald man wearing a strange pair of sunglasses with a lens missing. "I know that," she yelled. "I mean, what the hell just happened?" "You all should pay more attention to Lord Yomi," spoke a long dark-haired beauty with a stern expression. "The young master's condition leaves him unaffected by genjutsu." "We hadn't forgotten his orders, Lady Kagura," spoke the kimono-clad beauty. "Ranmaru, I believe a more tangible response is necessary." The boy quickly caught on to her request and took aim into the sky with his bow, arrow drawn. "Ninpu. Dashaburi, ninja art cloudburst," he fired an arrow into a gape in the forest canopy. As his arrow flew, there was a small flash of light before the sky darkened and a storm of arrows rained down on their intended target. Naruto stood undaunted as the rain of arrows drew closer when he felt a familiar tingle and instantly drew his sword. As he regained consciousness, the arrows came down into range and he began slashing and deflecting the storm. He quickly realized the situation he was in and took note of the 5 people watching his performance. The hail slowly came to a halt, the ground had become a thicket of arrows, with the exception of Naruto's immediate position. "Hell of a way to say hi," he pointed his blade towards his attackers. Not wanting to be rude, the woman in the kimono leaped down to the road, a few yards ahead of him, with a star-tattooed boy to introduce themselves. "Please accept our most heartfelt apologies, Master Naruto. We have been expecting you." She bowed slightly. "I am Ikaruga, and this is Rinku." They raised their heads back up, allowing Naruto to get a good look at both of them. The woman, Ikaruga, had long bright pink hair tied into 2 large buns atop her head, a curvaceous figure with peach skin and a beauty mark under each green eye. She wore a long white kimono, open at the top to reveal a fair amount cleavage, with a red and black striped sash around her waist and a pair of high platform shoes. She held a delicate yet firm grasp on her sword, which put him slightly on edge. The boy next to her, Rinku, barely came up to her thigh and looked to be somewhere around 12 years old. He had 3 pink tattoos under his left eye and wore a long-sleeve yellow shirt with a red sleeveless one over it, blue pants, an overly large red and yellow hat with a blue puffball on top, and a large pouch slung over his shoulder. "I take it you're my escorts?" he asked. "Weren't we supposed to meet on the pass?" "We were told to wait for you in this area," she answered, unaffected by his attitude. "We Mizoku only acknowledge strength. If Bishamontan was enough to claim you, then I was too weak for you to give a crap," he finished. "That about sum it up?" She smiled at him and nodded. "Quite astute, young master." Her gentle expression hardened as she swiftly drew her blade, separating Naruto's scabbard from his waist, except on one account. How'd she do that, he wondered, and what's that? "We were also ordered to test your abilities." With the exception of the stern-looking woman and the archer, they quickly surrounded him. "For your own safety, I suggest you not hold back." "I don't have time for this crap," he scratched his head. "I get you guys want piece of me." He quickly fell into a guarded stance with his katana held up horizontally at eye level on his right side. "So let's make this quick," he taunted. The 4 combatants slowly spread out, waiting for just the right moment to strike. He waited for them to make the first move. The girl with the gem on her forehead quickly glanced at her partners. Naruto noticed her and believed they had a plan just for him, so he decided to provoke them by sheathing his blade and shifting into his quick-draw stance. They hesitated only for a moment before they began their assault. Suiton. Sushibaku Heki, water release water restraining wall. The gem-crested girl slammed her open palm on the ground, causing a wall of water to erupt from the ground, trapping Naruto within. Ninpu. Dashaburi, ninja art cloudburst, called the boy in the trees before another storm of arrows rained down on him. This time however, Naruto had plenty of time to prepare for the attack. Tsunkiru, 1000 cuts, he drew his blade faster than most of his attackers could follow, shattering and splintering the incoming volley. Not wanting to give them any more time to plan out how they were going to kick his ass, he dashed headlong towards the water wall where Ikaruga was positioned and leaped over it. Ikaruga smirked at his vain attempt at escape and turned her back on him. Naruto was taken aback by her action, but didn't allow it to slow him. Just as he fully cleared the wall, she spun back towards him and drew her katana. Yujutsu style. Yasha Senku, empty flash. Naruto barely managed to block her lightning-quick attack, but the force of it sent back into the confines of the water wall. Escape is pointless, I'm afraid. We are all well aware of your combat prowess, young master. Your specialize lies in close-range combat. You're fighting a losing battle, why not surrender and come along quietly? We don't wish to keep Lord Yomi waiting. I get it. It all makes sense now. Your plan was to let that mountain tire me out, then attack me when fatigue's already weighing me down. Pretty underhanded, he deduced. You guys did your homework, guess I really don't need to hold back. As he explained his reasoning to them, he began to give off a faint blue aura as sparks fired randomly along his body, reminiscent to a freshly struck lightning rod. He held up his sword and fell back into his original stance and rushed the wall once again. "Ozo, Rinku," Ikaruga called, "if you please." At her call, Rinku reached into his bag, leaped into the air, and oddly enough pulled out 8 small yo-yos, one in between each finger and thumb. Ninja art devil yo-yos, the boy throw the yo-yos at Naruto. Oten. Doryu Taiga, earth release earth flow river, the dark man in the odd sunglasses called. Naruto didn't expect the ground under him to suddenly change into mud, halting his charge as the yo-yos closed in. He questioned how much damage a bunch of kids' toys could do, but didn't want to take that chance. His options few, he had little choice than to block them. Rinku had him right where he wanted him, and just as his yo-yos were about to make contact with Naruto, they changed trajectory and assaulted him from multiple directions. Naruto was in deep now, the ground slowly swallowed him up and Rinku confining his movement. "I'm sure you've noticed the predicament," Ikaruga spoke, "why not concede?" "Give him a break," he shouted, "you think this is enough to stop me?" He parried 3 yo-yos closing on his right and focused on the other 5 on his left. When they were just inches away from piercing his side, he lashed out with his bare hand and took hold of the strings. "No fair." Rinku shouted, "You can't just grab my strings like that. You'd be surprised what I can do." He gave the strings one strong tug, using them and Rinku to launch himself out of the mud and clear over the water wall. Rinku, still shocked by Naruto's display, was in no position to stop him. Naruto came flying towards the terrified Rinku and sheathed his blade. The boy screwed his eyes shut and awaited his end when he felt a hand grip roughly onto his head. "Out of my way, kid," he flung the frightened child face first into muck below and propelled himself off a tree branch back down towards Ikaruga. "It's not wise to test my Mujutsu style," she smiled. "Let's try this again." He crashed heavily onto the ground directly behind her. She turned to face him just in time to see him toss his sword into the air. As her attention was turned skyward to the blade, she was caught completely off guard to Naruto's advance. "Big sis, look out." shouted the young bowman from above. She narrowly dodged his kick and jumped back to evade his follow-up attack, disappearing behind the wall of water. Not wanting to sully her appearance with mud, she landed on top of the slightly recovered Rinku, forcing back down face first. Along, she grabbed the collar of his shirt and leaping out of the muck as the water wall dissipated. Once the wall fell, they watched Naruto casually make his way towards them with his sheath in hand, the blade spiraling down upon him. When the blade was mere inches from piercing his skull, he grabbed the blade out of the air and pointed it towards his attackers. Enough with the parlor tricks, he scowled. Oten. Doryuiden, Earth release Earth Dragon Bullet, the Dark Man called, creating a dragon-like head out of the earth before it began firing balls of mud. Naruto smiled at the effort and stood his ground. His aura intensified and sparks flared rapidly from his tightly clenched hand as he drew his blade once more. Or dance, he swung upwards in a large arc, projecting a massive blast of his energy along ground, engulfing the volley of mud without showing any sign of wavering. Ikaruga quickly stepped to the front of her teammates and pivoted around on her right foot, dragging the sheath along the ground. Mujutsu style. Kurura N, Garuda Flame, the air around her ignited into a spiraling torrent of fire, intent on outclassing her would-be master's attack. As their attacks were about to meet, it appeared Ikaruga's flames, being the larger of the two attacks, would overtake the one-eyed man's. However, instead of meeting in bright blast, Naruto's attack split her blazing torrent down the middle and continued on unabated. Impossible. She yelled. The blast closed in on them even faster, too late to evade. They attempted to shield themselves. The blast rang loud, creating a plume of dust and smoke, frightening the nearby wildlife away. As the smoke began to clear, Naruto felt a new presence where his attack connected. Who the hell are you? He glared into the cloud of debris. The smoke slowly cleared, allowing him to better see who was interfering with his fight. Standing boldly in front of his attackers, where he felt his attack connect, was a beautiful, slim, well-endowed woman with long black hair flowing down to the middle of her back. She wore an elaborate white blazer with gold buttons and trim, a white skirt and black tights, and white boots. In her left hand, she firmly held onto the sheath of a katana, her right resting loosely on the pommel. From the way she stood before him, he thought she might have blocked his attack. His suspicion proved highly likely when he saw burn marks and a thin trail of smoke coming from the end of her sheath. The fact she could block his attack without so much as breaking a sweat greatly unnerved him until "I apologize, Master Naruto." She knelt down to him with her head lowered, prompting the others to follow suit. "We apologize for our rudeness. We were instructed to test your progress under the advisement of Master Katakura and orders from Lord Yomi to see if you were in any way lacking." "Dirty old bastard," he calmed down, "and what do you think? You performed well above our expectations." She stood back up and gestured to the group behind her. "These people were all hand-picked for the sole purpose of restraining you." "Restraining me?" "Yes, if they were able to defeat you and bring you before Master Yomi, you would have failed the test put forth," she confirmed. "Then what? You would have killed me or something?" "Of course not," she answered, "your training would have restarted under the leaders of our clan." Everyone behind her cringed at the thought, which didn't go unnoticed. "I'm guessing that's bad," he thought aloud. "Who are you guys anyways?" Perhaps introductions would be best saved for later, she wondered. "I'm not so eager to let a bunch of guys who just attacked me to watch my back," he pressed. "Very well. I am Kagura Mikazuchi, captain of the 3rd platoon, and these are my subordinates," she introduced. "You've already met Ikaruga and Rinku." Ikaruga tipped her head respectfully, while Rinku coughed up some mud he swallowed accidentally. "Briefly," he remarked. "The boy in the tree is Ranmaru Mori." She pointed to the child archer sitting in the tree above. "This man here is Bose, and the girl next to him is Sue." "How's it hangin'?" Bose greeted. "Nice to meet ya," said Sue. "Likewise," or so Naruto claimed. "Nice glasses." "Thanks," he said. "C told you they were cool." "Someone had to think so," Sue retorted. "However informal," Kagura interrupted. "Does that meet with your approval?" "For now, I guess," he claimed. "Ranmaru, report back to Lord Yomi." "We will be there shortly," ordered Kagura. On it, the boy vanished into the canopy. Meanwhile, in Oto no Kuni above the pit, just as that bastard Isaya's information claimed, Teia found one of Orochimaru's hidden bases deep in a large overgrown forest on Oto no Kuni's western border, under the guise of an old dilapidated temple. Its cracking paint and damaged roof tiles obscured a true dark intent. The information claimed this location was a central hub of sorts for Orochimaru's curse seal research and experiments. She knew all too well what that meant. This was more than likely a pit. A holding area for prisoners who had yet to submit themselves to Lord Orochimaru, and a proving ground to weed out the weaker samples who had submit to him. The thought of those cells dug up far too many memories she would have preferred to stay buried. Bringing her attention to the task at hand, she carefully observed the exterior of the compound from her hiding place in the heavy canopy. She believed the coast was clear, for the most part, but knew better than to rush things when she was finally this close to her goal. If she was lucky and Orochimaru's tactics hadn't changed dramatically in the last 2 years, she could expect a patrol to make an appearance sometime soon. That would be her best chance to sneak into the base unnoticed. At this point all she could do now was sit quietly and wait for her little game of hide and seek to begin. Sometime later with Naruto and the Mizoku. Hours passed since Naruto and his entourage had sparred and they had yet to arrive. Now normally a nice leisurely stroll through the woods wouldn't be so bad, but he had to deal with an absurd amount of fatigue, his painkiller tag wearing off fast, the uncomfortable glares of a mud-covered child, and the group's remarkably rock-like social skills. Throughout their trek his attention was constantly being drawn to the immense stone formation, drawing ever closer. Tired of the silence, he attempted to spark some sort of conversation with some of his witty banter. "So how about them Knicks?" His attempt to break the proverbial ice got him some confused stares from the group and an unamused sneeze from Rinku. Now that he had their attention he cleared his thought, "So, how much farther to the village?" "We're almost to the foot off the pillar," Kagura answered. "You said that an hour ago," he deadpanned. "Your name's Kagura, right?" "It is. You said you're the captain of the 3rd platoon." She nodded. "How many platoons does your village have?" "Currently, we have 26 platoons. Each with varying numbers with a minimum of 15 members. How many members are in your platoon?" He wondered. "I have 20 members under my command," he gave a whistle. Wow, he was impressed. "With those kinds of numbers I'm surprised I didn't run into any more squads sooner." "We're more than enough to guard the area," Bose claimed. "I get you guys like your privacy, but that many soldiers guarding a small-time village in the mountains," he thought out loud, "a bit much don't you think?" "This valley isn't our home," Bose corrected. "Damn right, living this far in the sticks would be a real pain in the ass," Sue commented. "So where do you guys live?" Hearing his question, the entourage stopped dead in their tracks and looked at him with a dumbfounded expressions. "Did I say something wrong? You really don't know, do you?" Kagura questioned. "Know what?" "Holy crap," Rinku gaped, "he doesn't know." Zuai Karuga quickly covered the boy's mouth. "If Master Naruto doesn't know about it, why spoil the surprise?" She silenced them. "I agree," Kagura concurred, "you'll be in for a real surprise when you see the homeland." They continued onward, but his plan seemed to work and the stick that was once firmly shoved up their asses was removed. They started talking amongst themselves and even asked him more about himself. The only who remained silent was Kagura. His eyes once again drifting towards the stone. "Hey, I've been meaning to ask," he pointed toward the mountain, "what's the deal with that mountain?" "That's not really a mountain," Bose answered. "So what is it?" "There's actually a pretty good story behind," Sue spoke up. "Wanna hear it?" "What the hell?" Like he had anything better to do. "Okay," she began, "once upon a time there was this really big, strong, scary-looking dude. He was fighting this giant sea serpent in the homeland. He thought he had the thing cornered and tried to take one of its heads clean off, but he missed and cut the top of a pillar off. And it landed here." The end. Naruto gave her unamused look. "You suck at telling stories, you'll know that." "Do I look the type to tell long-winded stories?" she asked. "You have a point," he admitted, as if someone could cut something this big in two. "Her story is true, if you're satisfied with the spark notes," Bose spoke. "That story is about one of your ancestors, Lord Kenpachi Zaraki," Kagura interjected. "I'm told he was an incredibly brutal warrior who took immense pleasure in battle. That mountain was once the top part of one of the pillars surrounding the homeland. His attack severed it before launching it clear over the horizon. He ended up killing the monster, and some years later, our ancestors found this here. We call it Zaraki's Pillar, in his honor. At the base is a small settlement we use on occasion." Immediately he thought back to the ritual in the Dragon's Well, more specifically the statue of the wild-looking man with spiky hair. "He didn't have a chipped worn-out long sword, did he?" Naruto asked. "He did actually," she answered. "How did you know?" "I think I've seen him before." They all looked at him strangely. "Is that so?" Kagura wondered. "The settlement is just beyond these trees." They walked past the trees and like Kagura said a small settlement of about 10 small houses and a large main hall. With the kind of welcome he received earlier, he kind of expected to see the place full soldiers sparring or the reeking of wild boar roasting over fires. Instead this so-called settlement looked more like one those ghost towns you see in old westerns. Kagura led them to the large. "A word of warning," she warned, "it is impossible to lie to the Lord Yomi, so speak truthfully." She pushed open the large doors and entered the large lightless hall. "Introducing Master Naruto Uzumaki," Kagura called out into the darkness. Immediately torches began to light, moving from the doors around the hall until each burned brightly to a throne-like chair nestled at the far end of the chamber where a pale dark-haired slightly aged man with his eyes closed sat. Naruto watched as his escort moved past him and bowed before the man. After showing their respect, they moved out of the way and sat down on seat cushions to his left, leading up to the throne. "It is a pleasure to finally meet you Naruto," the man greeted warmly. "I am Yomi, one of the 3 leaders of the clan of the Mizoku. This has been a long time coming. Please have a seat." Naruto took up his offer and sat down on the cushion in front of Yomi. Now that he was closer, he was able to get a really good look at this, Yomi. He appeared to be a tall man, around 5'1/2 feet, somewhere in his mid-30s, long slicked back black hair, fair pale skin, and strangely enough 6 horns framing his head, 2 prominent horns jutting down from his forehead, and 2 more on both sides of his head. I'm sure you're wondering about my odd appearance, Yomi deduced. Many years ago, I lost the use of my eyes in an accident. My appearance helps me compensate for my handicap. So you grew horns, the young master stated. I thought most people got dogs. Indeed, Yomi agreed. Kagura, Ranmaru tells me Naruto passed my test. Is this true? It is, Master Naruto displayed strength worthy of his lineage, she reported. Excellent, but it appears he didn't come out unscathed, he claimed. The blade at his side smells of metallic ash, his heartbeat's uneven, and he even appears to be pain. Naruto flinched at the blind man deductions. It appears my analysis has made you uncomfortable, he claimed. It kind of does, Naruto answered. I've barely made a sound, and you pretty much figured me at first glance, metaphorically speaking. I tend to have that effect. Tell me, what do you require of the Mizoku? Katakura's letter told us much but neglected what you wanted personally. I need your help to find a friend of mine. She's on a dangerous mission involving a shinobi named Orochimaru, he answered. I see your predicament. Orochimaru of the Sannin is dangerous man, finding him would be difficult. The horned man held his chin. What makes you think she still lives? For all you know she may well be dead already. Ai is not that stupid, he remarked. If she thinks she has even a slim chance of completing her objective, she'll take every advantage she can to make it happen. She won't be killed easily. You and this Kunoichi are close. She's my best friend, we've been together since I left Konohagakure, he claimed. Can you describe her? Yeah, she just turned 16, about 55, long red hair, brown eyes, constant scowl on her face, extremely foul-mouthed and aggressive, and she's kinda built like Sue here. He paused and turned to his escort with an analyzing eye, except I think her chest is bigger. You bastard, Sue yelled out. Yomi laughed at her outburst. I see. She sounds like an admirable young Kunoichi. All you require is for us to locate her, you don't want us to retrieve her as well. No, he smiled, I can do that myself. Yomi liked the young man's determination and the strong fire radiating from his gaze. Very well, the blind man rose from his seat. You have the full support of the Mizoku, young Master Naruto, but how do you plan to accomplish this with your blade in such condition? Yomi strolled forward and knelt down to Naruto, unrolling a scroll with a storage seal before him. With a quick hand sign, a long Nadachi wrapped in bandages was released. Naruto slowly reached for blade, and as he grabbed hold of the hilt, he felt it shock him. He quickly pulled back and looked at a small burn on his palm, then back to the blade. He reached out again and just as before the blade shocked him, but this time it didn't hurt at all. In fact, he didn't feel a thing. He lifted it up and slowly removed the bandages. He recognized the worn sword immediately. This is Kenpachi Zaraki's Zanpakuto. He stared astonished at the blade. Is this a copy? It's genuine, we've kept it preserved for generations, Yomi enlightened. It will take time to forge a proper blade for you, until then you are more than welcome to use this one. Really? He liked the sound of that. Yomi rose and helped Naruto rise to his feet. Shall we test it? I'd like that, but can't it wait till the morning? He stood up. I'm on my last leg here. If the blade is unfit for you, we'd best know now rather than later, Yomi stated. We already have a practice field prepared for you. Yomi left the hall with Naruto and the others following close behind. They walk around back to the base of Zaraki's pillar. Yomi ran his hand across the massive structure and waved for Naruto to join him. Are you aware of how this monument came to be? Yomi asked. Yeah, Kagura filled me and he stood next to him. Excellent, Yomi said, thrust the sword into the pillar. You want me to deface one of your oldest monuments? Naruto asked in disbelief. We are simply testing the blade. I doubt Lord Kenpachi would mind too much, Yomi claimed. Okay then, Naruto took hold of the sword with both hands and raised it over his hand. Yomi and the others took several steps back as Naruto swung down. The blade rammed into the stone and bounced back, causing a small shock to vibrate through his hands. Don't worry about damaging the blade, the elder informed, channel as much Basara as you like through the blade. Naruto followed his suggestion and regained his posture, channeling as much power as he could into the katana. He swung down again and gashed deep into monument, feeling very little resistance he was able to embed the katana hilt down. Wow, I barely felt that at all, he commented, color me impressed. He tried to withdraw the blade, but it wouldn't budge. He looked down at the embed blade and saw it begin to glow. He tried to let go of the blade, but his hand held firm. Hey guys, a little help here, he struggled, man down, dragon in distress people. The members of the third platoon were well aware his dilemma, but Yomi stopped them from assisting him. I am sorry, Yomi spoke, but this is something that must be done for your own good. Before Naruto could figure out what he meant, he felt his remaining strength leave him. His legs buckled and he fell to his knees. His vision blurred, the blade was sapping not only his strength, but his Basara as well. He heard the group approach behind him as he inevitably blacked out. "Good luck," Yomi said. Akinoto no Kuni, a small squad of 4 shinobi, dressed in black and grey camouflage bearing the Otogakure insignia upon their brow, flew silently through the trees of the moonlit forest. They stopped in a small clearing dividing the forest from a rather large lake. The led shinobi slowly approached the water's edge and cautiously scanned the surrounding area. Not spotting or sensing anything out of the ordinary, he knelt down on one knee and began weaving hand signs. Oten. Tsuchi Kairo, Earth release Earth in corridor. The water began to tremble as a section of the lake bottom began to rise to the surface. The amassed land opened up before the shinobi and morphed into a passageway leading down into the lake. The led shinobi rose to his feet and signaled the others to follow. Upon entering the threshold, he noticed one of his men had their gaze hard fixed on the treeline behind them. "What is it, do you see something?" the leader asked, bringing everyone to attention. "No, it's nothing," he paused, "thought I heard something." They continued into the passage unabated. As the last member passed the entrance, the threshold closed up and the earth shrank back down to the lake bottom. Underneath the lake, the makeshift corridor connected into a vast network of underground passages. They continued down passage into a larger open area where another group of shinobi stood guard. Squad 2 to 5 reporting in, nothing unusual, the leader reported. The guard checked his patrol log. "They're cleared, report to the upper level cells," the guard ordered, "the new coordinators are reviewing the personnel." The squad complied and continued on past a guard post into passage leading the upper levels. New admins thought a certain redeed as she disappeared down another hall away from patrol. "Lucky me." "Hey, did you guys hear something just now?" one of the shinobi asked. "You're hearing things," the leader spat, "hurry up." Teia stealthily navigated the passages and bypassed the surprisingly slack guard details. Guards seemed to be placed sporadically around the facility, close to the central guard posts. The arrival of the new coordinators really worked to her advantage. She continued to venture deeper and deeper into the base until she heard voices approaching. Lacking the proper time to place them in under a genjutsu or conceal herself, she quickly transformed into one the male guard she snuck in with just as a group of 5 scientists in white lab coats rounded the corner ahead of her. "The research Kabuto provided is astonishing," one of them commented. "We could strengthen the parasite enzyme and manipulate the traits of each subject." "I've heard there are already prototypes ready for testing," the female scientist spoke. "If it succeeds the applications are limitless," another commented. Teia listened to them carefully as she walked past them. It seemed that bastard Kabuto developed something that got their panties in a real twist. She would have to find out more about that and given the chance burn all the research. After the scientists finally passed her, she decided to make use of them and discreetly pulled out her flute. "Mateki. Onitogicum, demonic flute demonic confinement," she played. Instantly the scientists stopped in their tracks and their expressions quickly became vacant as Teia approached them. They parted from her path and faced her. "You jagoffs are my puppets. When I say jump, you best damn well do it." They nodded their heads slowly. "Take me to the vault where Orochimaru keeps the scrolls." The puppets complied and began walking back the direction they came. She played her flute once more and the puppets began conversing amongst themselves once more as if nothing ever happened. "What were we talking about?" the scientist tried to recall. "Kabuto's research," Teia chimed. "Oh yes," he remembered, "if it succeeds the applications are limitless." "Do you suppose he requisitioned the Sound 4 cadavers for that?" Teia was surprised to hear that. "The Sound 4? Teia voiced. They were a group of Lord Orochimaru's so-called elite guard sent to acquire Sasuke Uchiha to become his next vessel, but they failed and were eliminated by Konoha and Tsunagenin," explained the female scientist. "Disgraceful," another spat, "killed by a squad of genin. Hopefully they're making themselves useful now." "Where is his research being conducted?" Teia gritted her teeth. "Who knows," she answered, "there's no telling which lab he's using." "What is the parasite enzyme?" the redhead asked. "The parasite enzyme is a prototype delivery system that allows us to deliver the curse seal enzyme by injecting it into a single subject, then releasing them into a densely populated area. The enzyme will then mutate into a highly contagious virus, turning anyone they came into contact with into a curse seal-bearing soldier, loyal to Lord Orochimaru. After 48 hours, the original subject turns into crystalline glass before disintegrating into dust." She paused. "With Kabuto's research we could increase its total effectiveness by a factor of 40, another finished. "That's a big-ass problem," thought Teia. The upper cells. In the upper levels of the pit's holding cells, the vast majority of the base's shinobi were assembled on the arena-like basin, looking up to the facility's new coordinators, a hulking man of near 6 feet and another smaller man, along with a medical ninja with a clipboard. Each shinobi was examined for anything they did not approve of. Their time with the coordinator Gurin had helped them to learn how to pick out such qualities that could lead to dissension, possible infiltrators and security links, as well as to discern capable leaders ripe for molding. A person's body language often spoke volumes to the discerning eye, as she often found. As they reviewed each ninja, they had to admit the crop was quite good, less than a handful seemed unworthy of Lord Orochimaru's employ. An hour into the review and the two had taken upon themselves to join the personal for a little one-on-one intimidation. They scanned each face like a piece of meat and were nearly finished when the larger of the two stopped before one the shinobi who arrived late. "You," the towering man pointed, "what squad do you belong to?" "Sir, squad 2 to 5 sir," he answered fearfully. Squad 2 to 5, step forward. At his command 4 shinobi separated themselves from the assembly. "Were any of you blessed with one of Lord Orochimaru's curse seals?" They all denied the honor. "How many here have a curse seal?" he asked the medic. "Not a one," the medic quickly replied after scanning the papers on his clipboard. "What's wrong?" the smaller coordinator asked. "These men smell of Lord Orochimaru's curse seal," the brutish man told his smaller partner, "and a woman." "You believe we have a mouse," the smaller man deduced. "How many Kunoichi do you know of have received his blessing?" "Only one comes to mind." "Squad 2 to 5 and 6-3, come with me." The two squads followed behind the bruiser. "The rest of you return to your station and proceed about your duties. Report any suspicious behavior," the smaller man ordered. "Take me to the central control." The medic quickly obeyed and guided him to the control room. In central control, the slender man ordered that all squads, currently not on patrol, to check in and report to the nearest checkpoint. From there he organized each squad into small units and strategically placed them in several locations around the base, leaving small contingents to act as rapid response teams. Meanwhile, the hulking man ordered squad 2 to 5 to backtrack their steps to the moment they first entered the base. Together they quickly retraced back down the winding corridors and passages until they stopped at an intersection near the checkpoint they first reported to. The brute placed his hand upon the passage wall and breathed in deep. "This way," he stated, "I found her trail." The man glanced up at the security camera before continuing down the intruder's trail. In the control room, the other coordinator saw his partner's gesture, examined the footage from camera D52 and all other cameras, the pursuit team pass, starting 10 minutes prior to squad 2 to 5 return. The technicians began working quickly, scrutinizing the footage for any signs of infiltration. With Teia, the scientists did as Teia programmed and guided her to a sectioned off area, intended only for researchers. Along the way, they passed other scientists, but each time they saw fit to completely ignoring her. She found it strange that none even bothered to look at her, considering this area was only for scientists and researchers. Perhaps they thought she was their latest guinea pig or some such thing along those lines. She began thinking this sort of thing must have been a rather common occurrence. Take a second-rate shinobi promised them power and boom, a willing lab rat. They continued to lead her further down into the base's recesses to a pair of reinforced steel doors with seemingly no way of entering. "Is this it?" she asked. "Yes," one of the thralls answered flatly. "Open it." At her command the female scientist placed her hand on the left side of the door, revealing a hidden panel. She quickly entered a code with her right hand without removing her left from the panel. After she entered the code, she removed her hands and the doors slowly slid open. Teia ordered her puppets to enter first, better safe than sorry. Once inside she let her disguise fall as she gazed at the aisles and walls littered with neatly stacked research logs, files, medical journals, shelves with scrolls of all shapes and sizes, and other parcels containing knowledge no doubt pilfered from all over the continent. She scanned over the vault's contents and quickly found it nearly impossible to locate any of the information she wanted. Luckily, she had group of well-behaved henchmen to take care of that little obstacle. "Bring me all the information on the Asajiri clan," she ordered. At her beckon the group of scientists scattered around the library and began piling documents, research logs, and scrolls at her feet. Slowly the pile grew in size until it started to tower a full head over her person. "You gotta be shitting me," she sighed as the scientists continued to bring more and more materials. "This is ridiculous." Thinking of the daunting task of carrying all the material out of the facility undetected, she began scouring the vault for a blank scroll, preferably a giant tool summoning scroll or two. She weaved in and out of the aisles until she found a few giant scrolls propped up on the back wall. She unraveled each scroll, avoiding the ones that appeared to have something sealed within them, and found only 2 that met her needs. Satisfied, she gathered them up and made her way back to the pile and the waiting scientists. "Is this all of it?" she asked rhetorically. "These are all the copies and materials we have related to the Asajiri clan," they dryly answered. "Wait," she paused in her tracks, "did you say copies, as in not the original?" "Yes, the original documents are kept separately in isolated caches," and with that she snapped. "Son of a bitch." She kicked the pile over angrily, burying the thralls up to their knees. "Seal this shit into those scrolls." She threw the blank scrolls roughly at them, not wanting to be bothered with the choir. As she turned to make her way to a dark corner to verbally berate her half-ass information broker, her foot kicked a small bond scroll with an insignia that resembled the Big Dipper constellation. She picked it up and unbound the scroll, pocketing the insignia, and glanced over its contents. All those who have proven themselves worthy to possess these teaching, do not stray from your path or the heavens will laugh. Haretsuon Ken 64th style. Psalms of Centuries End, she read aloud. Quickly realizing the scroll she held contained styles and techniques of Karetsuon Ken, the very thing she sought. She retreated to her dark corner and began reading the scroll in earnest, committing all she could to memory. Several minutes passed and the enthralled scientists approached Teia and placed 4 large scrolls in front of her. Teia glanced up at them from behind the scroll before standing back up to her feet. "Time to go," she shrugged, "what's the fastest way out of here?" "The nearest exit is Northern Gate bypass through the mountain," Teia gave them a board. "Well, grab a scroll and get a movin'," she barked. The scientists each picked up a scroll and headed towards the door. Teia pocketed the scroll she was reading and reapplied her henge before following behind them. As she left the vault and the doors closed behind her, every warning alarm in her head began screaming. Instinctively she ducked down to the floor, narrowly avoiding a barrage of poison-laced senbon, and used her crouched posture to launch herself further down the hall, away from her attackers. She glared down the confined space where 5 men, 4 Itagakure shinobi and a silver-haired brute, faced her down. Peering down the passage behind her, she spotted another squad with her unwilling guides knocked out on the floor, still cradling the giant scrolls in their arms. Shit, she cursed as she formulated an escape plan, the big guy's probably the leader, the squad with him are the dumb schmucks I snuck in with. 9 total. Those mad scientists were going that way, so the exit must be that way. I need Slow Artis's group down. I've seen you before, the brute stated, are you from Konoha? Go to hell. She quickly pulled a flute from behind her back, Mateki. Mujanansa, demonic flute chains of Fantasia. Before any of the shinobi could react the corridor was filled with an alluring melody. The effect was instantaneous, and the shinobi began hallucinating. They each fell to their knees, screaming and shouting as they watched their limbs melt away into a gelatinous mass. The few amongst them rational enough to realize they were trapped in a jinjutsu, attempted to halt the flow of their chakra, but to their surprise the hallucination held strong. Teia smirked as she watched her jinjutsu take root in the shinobi. Her gaze stopped on the one leading the 2 squads. Something wasn't quite right about him, even under the influence of her jinjutsu the man never made a sound and the air around him appeared to be heating up. It was a familiar feeling, a feeling that caused her to hesitate until she noticed the glowing red markings began to spread around his muscled body. The markings continued to spread until his body turned pale and his muscles increased in girth. She knew what he was trying to do and there was no way she'd let him finish his transformation to level 2. Aihakai Ka. Great destructive song, she screamed, sending a massive supersonic wave reverberating down the hall. The force of her voice intensified into the confined halls, demolishing the walls and destabilized the ceiling, causing them to collapse on the transforming brute and his men. As the walls fell, Teia raced towards the downed scrolls and gathered them up awkwardly in her arms. She felt the floor under her began to quake. Unsure of how the widespread the damage of her song would cause, she ran as fast as she could down the corridor, putting as much distance as possible between her and ground zero. She ran until she felt the shaking stop and turned to assess the damage. Dust and debris filled the passage obscuring her vision. Not giving it a second thought she proceeded onto the exit. "I remember you now," called an amalgamized voice behind her, a Redeed Kunoichi who uses a flute to cast sound-based jinjutsu. She turned back to meet the source. Gone was the man that once stood before her, in his place a 9-foot-tall man-beast, with the features of a massive bipedal white saber-toothed tiger. Black stripes wrapped around his porcelain white fur, eyes glowing a blood-hued crimson, his feral maw lined with razor-sharp incisors evident behind a row of fangs. She had heard rumors of certain shinobi possessing curse marks that transformed the user into animals, but brushed them off as just that, rumors. She never expected anything quite so monstrous, at least with the other curse marks the user still retained a human physique, most times. This transformation must have been painful, elongated arms of lean muscle connecting to brutishly clawed hands and bestial legs. They must have at least doubled his speed, that was the only he could have caught up with her so quickly. "I thought you were died. Where have you been hiding?" the blue-haired man inquired. "With your mama," she snapped back as his grip tightened. "We will find out everything eventually," he claimed, "but I'm sure Kabuto would want to see you first. He's been very interested in the Sound 5 of late." He clenched tighter and tighter around her throat, threatening to snap her neck as his claws dug into her skin drawing blood. Teia's vision quickly faded and she passed out as another squad arrived behind Subiru. He tossed her unconscious body to the ground with so much force it slid several feet past the group. "Take her to one of the cells on the upper level A37, he ordered, "take the scrolls to processing. I want to know what she was after." His arm slowly changed back to normal as he left to inform Kabuto of this development. "Take them to the infirmary." Mizuki dragged 4 dirtied scientists from the debris, shocking the shinobi with his transformed state. "There are 9 more buried under the rubble. Get a cleanup crew down here before they start to stink. He made his way past the group, reveling in the fear plastered on their shrouded faces. Once the beastly duo left the scene, the guards restrained the former Atagakur elite and dragged her limp body to the upper levels. At the upper-level prison block, in an area reserved for the more troublesome captives, they chained her up against the back wall and let her dangle helplessly. They locked the cell door and stood by for further orders. A few hours passed, the new administrators finally arrived just as Orochimaru's right-hand man was leaving the neighboring cell. Has he become more agreeable? Subiru asked. He's still resisting, Kabuto wiped his face. How's our new guest? Sir, she woke up while you were with the other prisoner, the guard answered. Kabuto opened the small view shutter in the door and peered inside at Teia's scowling face, somewhat skeptic of her identity. Are you certain that's her? He wondered. Positive, Mizuki confirmed, open it. The guards quickly complied and opened the cell door. Once inside, Kabuto approached the girl and held her head up to get a better look. She certainly is convincing, looks like her, Kabuto agreed as she tried to his hand. Who said you could touch me, bitch boy, she growled. As hot-blooded as I remember, he commented, take a blood sample. The administrator's assistant moved to follow his order, but got too careless as they approached her. Teia rewarded her thoughtlessness with a skull-shattering headbutt. The medic's eyes rolled to the back of her head as she hit the ground, her blood staining the cell floor. The guards rushed over to her. She's dead, one of the guards confirmed. Take her blood sample, Teia smirked, it's all over the floor. You bitch, a guard grabbed his knife. Calm down, Subiru ordered. Why so aggressive? Kabuto asked, you're among friends. Like hell am. Where have you been hiding? He asked, were you with the Leaf? Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. Fuck you and find out, she answered. No way in hell would she say anything about where she really was. If they thought the Leaf Village gave her asylum, then let him keep thinking that. Get someone to take her blood, Subiru ordered. If Konoha has anything to do with this, we'll find out soon enough. Mizuki gestured for the guards to remove their former assistant from the cell. Find out what she knows. I still have to deal with the assignment I've been given, Kabuto called as he turned his back to her. Big mistake. Teia took a sharp deep breath and prepared to make him a bloody smear on the wall. Unfortunately, Mizuki saw through her plot and muffled her voice with a large ball gag. None of that, the beast man enabled. Teia felt rather disconcerted at being silenced so indignantly and tried to shot them full of insults, but they came out as a string of comical yet discernible mumbles. That's right, you better run, Teia mumbled. Don't worry, I'll be back soon enough, he reassured her, send word to Lord Orochimaru. I'm sure he's been worried sick over your long absence. They left her and closed the heavy door behind them. Don't kill her, Kabuto told both Subiru and Mizuki, I'll need her alive for my work. Sir, they complied as Kabuto left them to their own devices. Once we get her sample, start processing her, Subiru coldly planned, we have a week to break her before handing her over. Send the specialists to the control room along with a new assistant. Subiru watched as the one of the guards dragged his careless assistant's corpse away as Mizuki opened the view shutter once more. See you soon, Red, he taunted. Blow me, she snapped back. Mizuki couldn't help but laughed at her bravado. He always liked the spunky ones, they always put up more of a struggle. With that final taunt, the two left to her to the company of her own thoughts and the cell's vermin. How do I get out of this one? She thought aloud. Unknown location. Naruto awoke face down in the dirt, his entire body felt as if it had been crushed in a vise, then run over by a herd of stampeding horses. By some miracle, he was able to bring himself back to his feet and gazed upon a gigantic castle stronghold. Confusion racked his tired mind. What was he doing here? Where was here? How did he get here? He couldn't remember any of it. Only one path lies before you, called out a deep baritone from behind him. He turned to meet the voice, only to be stared down by a behemoth of a man nearly 5 times his size. His visage giving meaning to the word power. Ornate black and red plate armor adorning the massive muscled body of a modern-day Goliath, his angry glare froze Naruto in his tracks. The behemoth lashed out his massive hand with incredible speed and gripped Naruto's entire body tightly before raising him to his eye level. You will suffer the fate of all who defy me, he spoke, your mounted head will serve a proper warning. No wonder everything hurts, this guy's crushing me with one hand, Naruto thought, who the hell is this guy and why does he have it out for me? To hell with this, there's no way I'm letting lard ass snuff me out. Naruto glared back at the behemoth and threatened back, if you want my head, you gotta work for it, fool. The behemoth howled as he threw Naruto through the castle's 3 outer walls. After colliding with the 3rd wall, his momentum dampened and he rolled painfully along the ground as he came to a stop. Knowing full well that throw should have killed, he wondered if it was worth standing, but he stubbornly put those thoughts behind him and rose to his feet again as the behemoth drew closer. If you would howl, have the strength to match it, he'd draw his mighty fist back and prepared crush the insubordinate boy. As his fist bore down on Naruto, every rational thought told him to evade. This man was not to be crossed, he is far more powerful than you can ever hope to be. Screw you. A sword materialized in Naruto's hand, and he parried the blow just as it was about to make contact. It'll take more than your sorry ass fist to take me down. The rage in the behemoth's eyes multiplied tenfold. Can you not see, you walk the path of ruin? The behemoth didn't give Naruto a moment and launched a flurry of punches the boy had no chance of guarding against. As each blow landed firmly home, one thought kept repeating itself in the young dragon's exhausted mind. I can't let him win. I can't let him win. I can't let him win. Uncaring of the thoughts racing through the boy, the behemoth continued to pummel him relentlessly before savagely kicking him in the torso, sending the boy skyward. The behemoth watched him soar before launching himself into the air after him. When Naruto reached the apex of his ascent, the behemoth appeared next to him and hammered the boy back down to earth. Naruto impacted the ground like a meteorite, creating a large crater in his wake. Naruto struggled to his knees when the behemoth landed squarely on top of him. His massive boots ground Naruto back down under his weight. So your true nature is finally revealed, he spoke, a pathetic snake crushed underfoot. The behemoth continued to drive his boot into Naruto when he heard the hurried steps of soldiers taking position behind him. He turned and made his way out of the crater to address the misguided souls. Lay down your arms, he called, I am Toyotomi Hideyoshi, swear fealty to me now and become one under my command. Those who defy me shall be given no quarter. He looked on at the battalion of men in blue and gray armor, bearing the seal of the Kiba no Kuni, waiting for an answer. From their ranks a red-haired woman, you want an answer? Naruto instantly recognized that voice and began crawling out of the crater to get a better look. Smoke the fucker. She ordered. The soldier quickly trained their spears and arrows and fired a volley upon the monster of a man. The behemoth stood undaunted before the volley and crossed his right arm over his body. As the volley closed in, he swung his mighty arm, I have no use the likes of you. His swing dashed and repelled the projectiles back at the battalion. Naruto managed to crawl his way out of the crater just in time to witness all his friends fall prey to their own barrage. Amidst the carnage stood his best friend, the woman who he had been by his side for as long as he cared to remember. She looked to him with her usual cocky grin, just as the remaining volley skewered her to death. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. This had to be a bad dream, this couldn't be happening. She dead. Are you now aware of what you lack, Snake? Toyotomi called to him. You bastard. Naruto jumped to feet and lashed out at him. The behemoth blocked the boy's staggered attack easily and punched him clear over the crater into the side of the castle. You suffer a malady of weakness. Only the strong have any right to survive, and I the strongest there is. With mighty roar, the sky was darkened and ominous storm clouds gathered and thundered. Naruto watched his grand display, but somehow it didn't quite compute. He was too preoccupied with his thoughts. They all dead. They all dead and it's my fault. Even so, are you just gonna lie down and take this? Asked voice from the back of his mind, is that all you're worth? Is this all they were worth? No, he answered, I can't let him win. Naruto pried himself from the castle wall and fell to his feet. Clear rage and determination boiling in his eye. The behemoth watched as Naruto strode boldly before him, sword in hand poised to strike. It seems you still don't understand your limits when facing a superior power, Toyotomi condemned. Shut up, Naruto spoke, what I lack. My limits. You keep spouting this crap like you know me. Again you howl rather than strike, the Goliath clenched his massive fists tighter, you still have yet to learn your lesson. Don't label me, you son of a bitch, Naruto shouted, you can't stop. Nothing can stop me. The behemoth bashed him back into the side of the castle and followed up with a devastating haymaker, demolishing the castle on top of Naruto. Lament you misgivings in the next life, Snake, he recited as he left the boy to rot in the rubble. As he retreated from the battlefield, a bright blue light shined forth from the rubble. Toyotomi turned back to the wreckage, the look in his eyes growing ever the more fierce as several bolts of lightning exploded from beneath it. Toyotomi shielded his eyes to the light and when it faded he was once again faced with the object of his ire. Damn it, why will you not die? He shouted. A few love taps and a bunch of rocks ain't enough to put me down, Naruto felt rejuvenated, didn't you hear me before? Nothing can stop me, especially you. His body constantly discharged sparks of energy and the fatigue and injuries plaguing him seemed non-existent. Insolent whelp, the behemoth called, this power wasn't meant for one such as you. What do you care? He answered, don't think I'm gonna let what you did to my friend slide. You'll pay for every last drip of their blood, you bastard. Mere flies circling refuse, a quick death is far too sympathetic a fate for their kind, he mocked, had you known your limits and not challenged me, they wouldn't have had to suffer my wrath. That crap's got old a while ago, Naruto claimed, monkey boy. What? I am Uzumaki Naruto, the one-eyed dragon, and I have no limits. He proclaimed as he freed his sword from the earth and released a massive bolt of energy directly into the stormy sky, scattering the ominous clouds. As he continued to release his power, kanji appeared and engraved itself onto the blade. Bonton will become the one-eyed dragon devouring the heavens, and what would do with it? No aspirations beyond saving your own pathetic life, squandering the power you've been given on frivolous endeavors, the behemoth judged. What I decide to do with it is my own damn business, Naruto answered. I know what I have to protect, and anyone who stands in my way can kiss my ass. Short-sighted fool, I refuse to recognize one such as you, he roared. Final round, Naruto declared as his Basara flared once more and cloaked his entire body as he charged the behemoth. The behemoth wounded his entire body to deliver the perfect crushing blow. When Naruto came into range, Toyotomi's fist accelerated with inhuman force and bore down onto its target. Naruto watched a massive fist come down upon him and quickly parried the blow, driving fist into the ground with a massive quake. Taking advantage of his weakened position, Naruto jumped up onto the behemoth's arm and flipped into his blind spot behind him. Realizing his mistake, the behemoth turned to meet the boy, but it was already too late. Naruto was overflowing with power and poised to pierce through his armor. Die! Naruto shouted as he smashed through the behemoth's armor and pierced his heart before blasting him with a lightning charge blast of Basara, killing him instantly and cooking his massive frame from the inside out. Nothing can stop, he breathed victoriously before collapsing from exhaustion. You laid it on a little thick, but overall not bad, came a voice as Naruto was engulfed by a blinding white light. Congrats kid, you passed this trial. Trial? Naruto wondered, this was a test. Yep, 1 down 5 to go, the voice informed, and the others won't be as nice as me though. I'm rooting for you. Just keep it cool and you'll be fine. Dropping a castle on me was playing nice, he remarked as the light began to fade away. White bitchin', I went through the same thing, back in the day. More of these tests are gonna kill me, the boy complained. Then get stronger so that doesn't happen, said the voice as a matter of fact. Okay, time for you wake up. Next time you're here, drop me a line. See you around kid. Sometime later, Naruto slowly opened his eyes to the bright warm sun on his face and possibly the softest bed in the world. He rolled to the edge and stumbled to his feet. His balance was slightly off and he was uncomfortably stiff. He twisted and stretched the kinks out of his system and failed to notice the door open. Excuse me, Master Naruto, called a timid maid as she averted her gaze. I'll tell Lord Yomi you've awakened. She quickly left the room, her face bright red. What's her deal? He wondered as a surprisingly cool breeze moved through the room. Oh crap. He looked down, realizing he was naked as the day he was born. His scarred form on display for the world to see. He looked around the room for anything to cover his shame, but before he could find anything a knock came from the door. Excuse me, young master, he heard someone call. He dashed back to the bed and covered himself beneath the blankets just as the door was pushed open. You're finally awake, I didn't know what to think when I saw that maid leave in such a hurry, said the butler as he placed some clothes on the bed. She dropped these in the hall. Those aren't my clothes, he said. Your belongings bear the insignia of the Katakura clan. Master Yomi had them laundered and put away, he answered. They will be returned when you leave the city. City? Naruto asked surprised. The butler moved over to balcony windows and pushed them open. You've been asleep for the past 8 days, the butler informed. 8 days, Naruto stammered as he quickly dressed himself under the blanket. I was sleeping for 8 days. He jumped out of bed, now fully clothed, and joined the butler on the balcony. Allow me to be the first, the butler bowed. Welcome to the floating city, Zwelny. Naruto was welcomed to an astonishing view of a massive modern city stretching out before him for miles, surrounded on sides by the vast blue ocean. What if Naruto has dragon fire and ice council bashing? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.